Chapter 890. Do you know the price of ticket? Wang Sheng asked, puzzled. The two twin beauties could be considered pretty, but they were still a far cry from the group of sisters in Wang Sheng's residence who specialized in beauty and sexiness. They were just brave enough to wear it outside, but that was not enough to attract Wang Sheng. Therefore, Wang Sheng asked him politely, I know, 10,000 gold coins for one. The beautiful assassin on the left said casually, What's the matter? Just pay the price. All right. Since the other party was buying tickets and not asking for them, it didn't matter. It didn't matter who they were selling to. Wang Sheng immediately asked, How many tickets do you want? 20. The one on the right didn't seem to have a good temper. She replied coldly, All of them are red cards. Oh, no problem. Wang Sheng agreed without hesitation. He then said in a low voice as if he was talking to himself, I thought killing Uncle Li was enough. Turns out there are more than 10 of them. His voice wasn't loud, but the two beautiful twins heard it clearly. Their expressions changed instantly. They had never seen anyone who dared to talk about Uncle Li like that. Very soon, Steward Wang attentively handed over 20 tickets to Wang Sheng. These are the tickets you want. Wang Sheng casually handed it to one of the twins. I will settle the payment with the mayor. When it's time, you can enter the theater with the tickets. Thank you. The two assassins were polite. They thanked him and were about to leave. Oh yes, I forgot to remind you that the emperor and many important members of the royal family will be attending this concert. Wang Sheng didn't forget to remind them one last time. In addition, Song Guogong's daughter, Lady Song, will also be attending the concert. The representatives of the other feudal vassals in the capital will also be attending. The two girls were stunned. Although they knew that the emperor would most likely be attending, what was the point of telling them this? I'm telling you this to warn you. Wang Sheng did not hide his motive, and his tone suddenly became stern. This performance concerns the interests of almost all the forces in the world, including the carefree city that you represent. Whoever dares to cause trouble at the concert and ruin everyone's good time will be the public enemy of the world. Wang Sheng's unprecedentedly strict tone made the two beautiful twins cautious. She gave a ladylike bow to Wang Sheng and then left politely. The figures of the two women had disappeared. Old Taoist Ling Su suddenly appeared behind Wang Sheng. Are you sure that they won't make a move before the concert? Maybe before. Wang Sheng smiled, then turned to look at old Taoist Ling Su and said, But they shouldn't have come here personally to demonstrate their strength. Even if they were given 10 guts, they wouldn't make a move. The two women coming to ask for tickets could be considered as one of their motives, but their real motive was definitely to demonstrate their strength and increase the pressure on Wang Sheng. In the end, Wang Sheng turned around and used a concert to suppress them. Just as Wang Sheng said, this matter concerned the interests of all the forces in the world. Whoever dared to cause trouble would be the public enemy of the world. Uncle Li was an old fox. He was able to keep his composure after Wang Sheng left Carefree City for such a long time, so he must be able to tell whether Wang Sheng was joking or not. Of course, more importantly, he probably wanted to confirm whether the legendary concert was really that amazing. So far, Wang Sheng had given out more than 600 tickets worth 10,000 gold coins. As for the remaining 300 tickets, Wang Sheng thought about it and planned to sell them to the public. However, since he had invited the representatives of the major vassal states to participate, he decided to sell only 100 tickets to the public. As for the rest, other than a batch that Wang Sheng kept for his own people, he sent them all to the representatives of the major vassal states. A few tickets for each family was enough for them to experience for themselves. After careful selection, more than 100 people from the Duke's residence were selected. These people were all loyal and close to breaking through to the next level of cultivation. Dozens of tickets were also sent to the women in the Duke's residence for Rosa to choose suitable candidates for herself. Just like that, all 1,000 tickets were taken care of. The 100 tickets that were put up for sale were quickly sold out. No one was a fool. No matter how Wang Sheng's reputation was in other aspects, no one had ever said anything bad about Wang Sheng when it came to business. It could be said that Wang Sheng really got what he paid for. He cheated neither the old nor the young. If Wang Sheng dared to put up a ticket worth 10,000 gold coins, it meant that the value of the ticket was definitely higher than 10,000 gold coins. If anyone missed such a good opportunity because of their stinginess, they probably wouldn't even have the chance to cry. The news slowly spread. When Mei Er found out that Song Yin had come to the capital, especially when she found out that Wang Sheng had specially gone to Song Yin to give her a ticket during the day, her expression turned a little ugly. However, she was only targeting others. When she faced Wang Sheng, the smile on Mei Er's face was even more charming than usual. Only the maids around her knew that she wasn't in a good mood. From the moment Wang Sheng named the show Colorful Club, Mei Er knew that Wang Sheng still had Song Yin in his heart. Now, Song Yin actually swaggered into the capital. What was she trying to do? Fortunately, Mei Er knew what was good for her. It didn't flare up. Although she was in a bad mood, it didn't delay anything. Moreover, it was obvious that Mei Er was much more diligent in her cultivation compared to before. The Duke's residence was calm and peaceful, but the capital was surging in the dark. The entrance ticket price of 10,000 gold coins astonished all the forces present. Of course, the most shocked were the representatives from the vassal states other than Song Yin. Steward Wang didn't say much when he sent them the tickets. He only said that he was inviting them to the concert. But an invitation was an invitation. Why did he ask them to remember to send the gold coins to the Duke's residence? They had seen others invite people, but they had never seen Wang Sheng invite people in such a way. Inviting people and asking them to buy tickets? Would Wang Sheng be short of a few 100,000 gold coins? Obviously not. Then everyone had to think about what was going on. Steward Wang revealed a lot. First, he stated that the emperor would attend the concert personally. Then, the eldest daughter of Duke Song would attend as well. Just these 2 points were enough for the representatives of the vassal states to see what was going on in person. Moreover, Steward Wang had given them hints. Just like Wang Sheng, Steward Wang also gave these representatives sufficient hints according to Wang Sheng's intentions. That was, the Duke of Everlasting Victory, Wang Sheng, strongly suggesting that they bring their trusted aides or relatives to attend the concert. This was their only chance. Countless messages were sent back to the various vassal states, and all parties were confused by this sudden news. They simply stopped guessing. After all, it was only a few days. They just had to wait and see the results. Chapter 891. Things were getting out of hand. The entire capital was now discussing what a concert that cost 10,000 gold coins a ticket was like. It was so big that even the appearance of 2 ridiculously beautiful twins dressed in strange clothes on the streets yesterday was overshadowed. Good move, Uncle Lee praised. Standing in front of him were the 2 beautiful twins from yesterday. He went out early in the morning and heard a lot of rumors about this concert. Of course, the 2 girls must have attracted a lot of attention. The ones who were really listening to the news were the people in Carefree City who did not show up. Uncle Lee was very clear about Wang Sheng's methods. This matter was getting bigger and bigger. Even Uncle Lee did not dare to act rashly. Otherwise, if he really incurred the wrath of the public, even though entering Carefree City was said to be able to avoid being hunted down, when all the forces in the world wanted to hunt down one person, Uncle Lee might not dare to make an enemy out of everyone in the world. Perhaps when the time came, the Carefree City Lord would be the first to hand him over. So what if his cultivation was high? Could he really kill everyone in the world? Things had gotten so big, you're forcing me to not make a move. Uncle Lee sneered. Seeing that Uncle Lee's expression was not right, the twins hurriedly went up to him and massaged him. At the same time, they did not forget to rub their flexible bodies against Uncle Lee's body. Originally, one of their missions was to serve Uncle Lee well. Now, it was the perfect time to let him calm down so that he wouldn't cause any trouble in the capital. Wang Sheng's method was very simple and could be seen through at a glance. Uncle Lee was now faced with 2 choices. The first was to get rid of Wang Sheng before he could make a big deal out of the concert. That way, Wang Sheng's future development and everyone else's chances would be nipped in the bud. The other choice was to wait for Wang Sheng to successfully hold the concert. However, this was actually not a good choice for Uncle Lee. This was because once Wang Sheng's concert became a big hit, Uncle Lee would not dare to easily make a move against Wang Sheng in the future. Of course, if Wang Sheng's concert was all bark and no bite, then Uncle Lee could kill Wang Sheng as much as he wanted, and no one would say anything. The problem was, Wang Sheng had taken the initiative to make such a big fuss. Was there any possibility of failure? Before coming here, Uncle Lee had done some research. During the Royal Symphony Orchestra's previous performances, there had indeed been people who had made breakthroughs. It was indeed very beneficial to one's cultivation. If he wasn't confident, why would Wang Sheng do this? Looks like I have to act as soon as possible. I can't give him any chances. Uncle Lee leaned back, feeling the elasticity of the two red-card assassins' bodies as he muttered to himself. Sigh. A faint sigh rang in Uncle Lee's ears. It was filled with regret. Boo! Uncle Lee was shocked. How was it possible for such an expert to sigh so silently beside him? Moreover, it was after he said a sentence to himself that he sighed. The two beautiful twins didn't hear anything at all. Seeing Uncle Lee suddenly startled with a face full of vigilance, the two girls were directly stunned. What was wrong with Uncle Lee? Why did he suddenly become like this? Was he under too much pressure? Or was he hallucinating after being in the armory for too long? Sigh. Another sigh sounded. This time, Uncle Lee heard it clearly. It was really someone sighing in his ears. What made Uncle Lee's hair stand on end was that the two girls beside him actually didn't notice it at all. Uncle Lee wasn't the kind of person who would make a fuss over nothing, but this time, he really felt the pressure. Uncle Lee had been in the underground armory for decades, and he had seen many famous assassins of the worry-free city. To be honest, there wasn't a single person who could make him feel pressured. Even if it was Wang Sheng, he didn't feel pressured by his cultivation. It was just that Wang Sheng could damage the scrolls in the armory that made him hesitate to take action. However, the two sighs just now gave him a completely different feeling. He was a peerless expert who couldn't even detect his whereabouts, but could easily hear his words, monitor his movements, and accurately transmit a sound transmission to him without attracting the attention of the two legendary realm experts. Uncle Lee had already maximized his senses and aura to the maximum. He believed that within 100 meters, even a mosquito wouldn't be able to escape his senses. Even so, Uncle Lee still couldn't detect the other party's location. Senior, why aren't you showing yourself? Do you have any advice for us? Uncle Lee suddenly bowed to the air and said seriously. The two beautiful twins had already sensed that something was wrong, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't detect anyone around them. When Uncle Lee opened his mouth, the two girls were immediately shocked. Uncle Lee was already the senior they were talking about. So who was this senior that Uncle Lee was talking about? Right now, the two girls didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They were afraid that they would anger the senior that Uncle Lee was talking about, and he would vent his anger on them. Leave from the west gate of the capital and go to the small forest 5 kilometers away from the city. I will wait for you there. A clear voice sounded in Uncle Lee's ears. It was very calm, but it had a power that couldn't be disobeyed. All right. Uncle Lee's fighting spirit suddenly rose. Even though he knew that his cultivation was inferior to the other party, Uncle Lee was still incomparably excited. He couldn't wait to fight with such a great expert. Uncle Lee nodded and walked out of the room without turning his head back. At the same time, he didn't forget to say, "Wait for me here." The two girls didn't dare to move at all. Uncle Lee's sudden burst of high fighting spirit almost caused the two of them to collapse. Hearing Uncle Lee's words, the two girls came back to their senses and hurriedly agreed. They didn't dare to say anything else. Normally, the two girls thought that they were already experts in the legendary realm, but in front of Uncle Lee, they were like two children. They couldn't resist at all. Uncle Lee didn't even need to do anything. Just his aura alone was enough to suppress them. Now, Uncle Lee had actually encountered an even more terrifying expert. It turned out that the capital was so hidden. Previously, the two girls had dared to wear the outer clothes of the Dream Workshop and show off on the streets of the capital. Now, even if they were 10 times more courageous, they wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous. Uncle Lee had already walked out. He didn't dare to be too shocking, so he walked at a slightly faster speed than usual and headed straight for the capital's west gate. Right now, he couldn't wait to see the expert that could make him feel so pressured. He wanted to spar with him. Even if he couldn't win, he wanted to know what exactly he was lacking in. After leaving the West Gate, there weren't many people at this time. Uncle Lee increased his speed, and in just a short while he saw a small forest. Chapter 892. Uncle Lee dashed into the small forest as fast as he could. Outside, he couldn't sense any aura in the forest, but when he rushed in 100 meters, he immediately saw the back of a person. Whoosh! Uncle Lee's figure turned into a bolt of lightning and dashed towards the figure. However, just as he was about to get close, the figure suddenly flashed and disappeared from Uncle Lee's sight. When it reappeared, it was already standing in front of him. "It's you?" This time, Uncle Lee saw it clearly. Because of this, he was extremely shocked. Of course, the old Taoist Ling, Su, had asked Uncle Lee to come out. Since he knew that Uncle Lee was in the capital, how could the old Taoist be so bold as to not do anything passively? Early in the morning, the old Taoist strolled to Uncle Lee's residence. Uncle Lee was too arrogant, and the two female assassins were too eye-catching. The old Taoist had casually asked them where they lived. If Uncle Lee had waited for the concert to start, the old Taoist would not have said anything. He was someone who had personally experienced the magical effects of the Grand Master Orchestra's performance. The formation of the Grand Theater was even more powerful than that of the small theater. After experiencing it once, all the feudal lords in the world would probably go crazy. After all, the only person who could make those Grand Masters cooperate was Wang Sheng. Other than Wang Sheng, no one else would be able to do anything to them. The reason why those people were Grand Masters was not only because of their superb skills, but also because of their bad tempers. Otherwise, they would not have lived in seclusion all over the country. If others wanted to threaten the 30 musical instrument grandmasters with death or other methods, they would either have to wait for the 30 legendary realm experts to fight with them, or the 30 legendary realm experts would simply ignore them. What would happen to everyone then? The only solution was to befriend Wang Sheng. Even the mayor of Carefree City would have to be nice to Wang Sheng. Uncle Lee might be powerful, but without the support of the worry-free city, would he dare to face all the experts in the world alone? Unfortunately, Uncle Lee was Uncle Lee after all. The sly old fox understood in the blink of an eye that he could only act in advance. Before Wang Sheng's influence reached its peak, killing Wang Sheng would have the least impact. However, what Uncle Lee did not expect was that his muttering to himself revealed his thoughts, and at this moment, the old Taoist priest heard his words. Would the old Taoist let Uncle Lee kill Wang Sheng? It was obviously impossible. That was how the old Taoist asked Uncle Lee out. No wonder people say that the Laojun Taoist temple is unfathomable and should not be easily provoked. It turns out that there's indeed a great master like you around. Uncle Lee investigated Wang Sheng. How could he not investigate the people around Wang Sheng? Of course, he could recognize the identity of old Taoist Ling Su. However, his fighting spirit was high now. What he wanted to do most was to fight with old Taoist Ling Su. Even if he could not win, his life would not be in vain. Take this. Old Taoist Ling Su did not waste any time. He called out and pounced forward. Boom! Their fists collided in the air. The instant their fists collided, the entire small forest seemed to have been bombed by the heaviest of bombs. All the trees, grass, and rocks within 20 meters of the two of them were turned into powder. Smoke and dust were ignited and instantly rose dozens of meters high, completely covering the two people and the grove. At the same time, a huge pit that was more than 10 feet deep appeared under their feet. The strange thing was that the huge pit was very deep, but the place where the two of them stood didn't seem to have changed at all. It didn't sink or protrude. It was exactly the same as before. Even the grass under their feet was still full of life. However, this was only the area around the two's 4 feet. The rest of the area was as if it had been carved by a knife and an axe. Everything had been removed cleanly. In the deep pit, only 4 extremely smooth soil pillars were left, supporting the two people on top. The smoke and dust had already obscured the two people's vision, but at that moment, neither of them looked at the other with their eyes. Both of their auras were released at the same time. Every movement around them could be seen clearly, as if they had seen it with their own eyes. There was no need to observe with the naked eye at all. From the beginning to the end, the two people only exchanged one punch. After that, the two of them seemed to be frozen in place, maintaining the scene of their fists meeting. They did not move at all. After a while, one of the two finally made a move. It was Uncle Lee. He suddenly opened his mouth and coughed. Then, a stream of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, past his chin, and onto his lapel. It was only at that moment that old Taoist Ling Su retracted his fist and stood up straight. He stood on two soil pillars that were only the size of his feet, but he looked indescribably sage-like. "Thank you, Senior." Uncle Lee also slowly retracted his fist and stood up straight, thanking old Taoist Ling Su. One punch from the old Taoist had made him feel the difference between him and the old Taoist. It was a difference of life and death that made Uncle Lee feel despair. It was a difference that made Uncle Lee feel that he would not be able to catch up even if he cultivated in the armory for a few decades. In other words, if the old Taoist had wanted to kill Uncle Lee, he would have only needed to use a little more strength. The reason why Uncle Lee did not die, could still stand and speak, and only spat out a small mouthful of blood, was because the old Taoist had shown mercy and did not intend to take his life. "I'm letting you go because there are too few people like us." The old Taoist Ling Su did not speak, but the moment he did, he exuded the aura of an expert. "Of course, there are conditions." "Senior, please state your conditions." Uncle Lee was very straightforward. Since he had lost, and the other party had spared his life, there had to be conditions. Why was it because there were too few people like us? Uncle Lee was a sly old fox. How could he believe in such a legend? The only possibility was for Uncle Lee to let Wang Sheng go. For the next 3 years, you cannot attack Wang Sheng. The old Taoist Ling Su did not keep Uncle Lee in suspense and directly stated his conditions. That's it. Uncle Lee was stunned. He thought that he was going to let Wang Sheng go. If he was going to let Wang Sheng go, Uncle Lee might not even consider it. He might even think of ways to attack Wang Sheng. However, he did not expect that he would only be forbidden from attacking Wang Sheng for the next 3 years. Wasn't that too simple? If that was the case, it was not impossible to consider it. That's it. Old Taoist Ling Su nodded his head like an expert. Then, he turned to Uncle Lee and said, "However, if you still find it hard to calm down and are extremely unhappy, I can give you a chance to collect some interest first." Collect interest? How? Uncle Lee was obviously willing. Even if he could not kill Wang Sheng, collecting some interest first was not a bad idea. "It's simple. Treat him and come with me." The old Taoist Ling Su jumped casually to the edge of the grove. "I'll say this first. I'll give you the chance, but whether you can collect interest or not is up to you. If you get beaten up by someone else, you can't blame anyone else." Chapter 893. At this moment, Uncle Lee did not dare to be arrogant in front of old Taoist Ling Su. He obediently wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and used the spiritual qi in his body to suppress his injury. The old Taoist did not hurt him too badly. He only shook Uncle Lee's internal organs, letting him know that the old Taoist could kill him at any time. That was enough. Uncle Lee jumped to the edge of the grove and followed the old Taoist to the city respectfully. How could an old fox who had lived for more than 100 years not be able to see the situation clearly? On the way, Uncle Lee did not dare to go too far, but he still asked carefully, "Senior, since Duke Changsheng is a secular elder of the Laojun Temple, why didn't he kill you to get rid of future troubles?" Uncle Lee did not say it out loud, for fear that the old Taoist Ling Su would have this idea. It was not easy for him to be merciful, and it would not be good for him to have the intention to kill. However, the old Taoist directly said what he was thinking. "Yes," Uncle Lee quickly admitted. "Keeping you alive will give him enough pressure." The old Taoist Ling Su was not afraid that Uncle Lee would fall out with him, so he straightforwardly told him what he was thinking. The old Taoist said it casually, but in Uncle Lee's ears there was a burst of unbearable embarrassment. The reason why he did not kill you was because he wanted to use you as a whetstone to sharpen Wang Sheng. Was there anything more infuriating than this? However, the old Taoist said it so straightforwardly. No matter how angry Uncle Li was, he could not help but swallow his anger when he thought about the power of the old Taoist punch just now. People under the eaves had to lower their heads, and this was the situation that Uncle Li was in now. After that, Uncle Li did not dare to ask anymore. He obediently followed the old Taoist Ling Su into the capital and then rushed all the way to the Duke's mansion. When they entered the Duke's mansion, Uncle Li could not help but ask, "What are we going to do?" Everyone in the mansion came to greet them, but no one came to question them. "I told you to collect some interest," old Taoist Ling Su said unhurriedly. "I told you long ago." Confused, Uncle Li followed old Taoist Ling Su to Wang Sheng's practice room. At this time, Wang Sheng was practicing in the practice room. When he saw old Taoist Ling Su come in with Uncle Li, he was also puzzled. "We talked outside the city, and he promised not to attack you for 3 years. The old Taoist pointed at Uncle Li and said to Wang Sheng, "However, I promised him that he would collect some interest first." "Interest?" Wang Sheng asked in surprise. He knew that the old Taoist had found Uncle Li and suppressed him, but he still did not understand what the old Taoist was saying. Old Taoist Ling Su gestured to the middle of the practice room with his mouth. Wang Sheng immediately understood, and a smile appeared on Wang Sheng's face. He looked at old Taoist Ling Su and Uncle Li, and was extremely satisfied with the old Taoist arrangements. After the fight between Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su, they stuck a few wooden stakes in the practice room and surrounded it with ropes to form a boxing ring. When Wang Sheng needed to relax, he would fight with the guards of the Laojun Taoist temple. He did not expect that the old Taoist would bring Uncle Li over and let him collect interest from Wang Sheng's boxing. Uncle Li had a puzzled look on his face ever since he entered. Be it the equipment Wang Sheng was using or the area in the middle that was surrounded by ropes, he had no idea what they were for. The old Taoist did not care too much. He called 2 people in and asked them to fight in the boxing ring for Uncle Li to see. The rules are very simple. No legs, no hitting below the waist, no hitting the back of the head, and no throwing. Old Taoist Ling Su threw a pair of boxing gloves, head protectors, and bandages to Uncle Li, and then explained the rules. As for Wang Sheng, he had already started to take off his shirt and slowly wrap the bandages around his hands. "To be fair, I will seal both of your spiritual energy," said the old Taoist. The old Taoist priest said to the 2 of them, then turned to Uncle Li. "Whether or not you can receive interest is up to you." Uncle Li roughly understood what was going on when he saw the fighting posture of the 2 people in the ring. When he looked at Wang Sheng again, there was a trace of bloodthirst in his eyes, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Even if his spirit chi was sealed, given Uncle Li's confidence in fighting, he believed that he would be able to beat Wang Sheng to a pulp. Wang Sheng also gave old Taoist Ling Su a satisfied smile. Right now, he would definitely not be able to defeat Uncle Li with his true strength. However, with his spiritual energy sealed, how could Uncle Li have an easy time? Want to collect interest? Let's see who's going to collect interest. Mayor and Rosa had already rushed over when they heard the news. When they heard that the old Taoist had brought an expert into the Duke's mansion to fight with Wang Sheng, they were shocked. When they saw that the fight had not started, they were slightly relieved. It was Uncle Li's first time using boxing gloves and protective gear, so Wang Sheng sent a guard to explain the functions and principles of the gloves and protective gear in detail. At the same time, he also helped Uncle Li tie the bandages around his hands. As for Wang Sheng, Mayor and Rosa had already started to massage Wang Sheng to relax. The old Taoist was very particular. He called the 2 of them to the middle of the boxing ring and sealed Wang Sheng's spiritual energy in front of Uncle Li. Next, he did the same to Uncle Li. This was Uncle Li's first time having his spiritual energy sealed, but he did not resist at all. The old Taoist could kill him with his real strength, so there was no need for him to play tricks. After his spiritual energy was sealed, Uncle Li felt it himself and nodded at the old Taoist. Although it was said that his spiritual energy was sealed, it could not be released to attack others. However, the spiritual energy still flowed in his body and still had a strong protective power. In other words, the old Taoist was not using this to trick him. Uncle Lee was very satisfied. Wang Sheng trusted the old Taoist even more, so he did not feel anything at all. Anyway, Wang Sheng's cultivation realm had been reduced to nothing not long ago, so it was not much different from having no spiritual energy at all. After feeling it again, he was more used to it than Uncle Lee. Both of them were full of confidence. When their eyes met, there seemed to be a sizzling sound. Everyone present could feel the confrontation between the two of them. "I won't take advantage of you." Wang Sheng was enjoying the massage from Mayer and Rosa. He said to Uncle Lee, who was trying on a boxing gloves, "There are sandbags and targets over there. You can get used to it first. I'll wait for you." If it was a hot-tempered person, these words would definitely provoke him, and he would immediately want to fight with Wang Sheng. Of course, this was exactly what Wang Sheng wanted. Wang Sheng wanted to fight with him when he was not familiar with the boxing gloves. The old Taoist had suffered the most at the beginning, but he was basically on par with Wang Sheng later on. It would be a waste not to use this kind of provocation. Unfortunately, Uncle Lee was a real sly old fox. He did not fall for it at all. Instead, he thanked Wang Sheng and went to the sandbags and targets to test the power of the boxing gloves with a smile. Chapter 894. Uncle Lee went to get used to it, while Wang Sheng stood up and started to warm up. Uncle Lee's strength was outstanding. Although his spiritual qi was sealed, one could tell from his well-maintained muscles that his physical strength was not too weak. It was far from being comparable to old Taoist Ling Su's bones. 10 minutes later, Uncle Lee returned to the boxing ring. After the guards checked Uncle Lee's gloves and headgear, Uncle Lee and Wang Sheng stood in the boxing ring together. Uncle Lee glanced at Wang Sheng, then suddenly asked old Taoist Ling Su with a bloodthirsty expression, "Senior, how far can our attacks go if we fight like this? If it's not against the rules, we can hit the opponent until he loses consciousness or can't stand up." Old Taoist Ling Su replied casually, "That's good." Uncle Lee laughed, then turned to Wang Sheng with a sinister smile. "Kid, although it's a pity that I can't kill him, Senior said that you're collecting interest, so I'll reluctantly accept it." "It's not certain who's collecting interest." Wang Sheng laughed as well. He raised his fists and slowly walked forward. "Do you really think I can't deal with you without spiritual energy?" Uncle Lee's expression slowly turned cold. As he spoke, the muscles on his body began to swell, causing his originally fitting clothes to bulge. "When I was in Carefree City, I spent more than 20 years strengthening myself. You didn't expect this, did you?" As he spoke, Uncle Lee also slowly walked forward. Soon, there was only a distance of 2 arms between Wang Sheng and Uncle Lee. Wang Sheng raised his gloves and suddenly laughed. "That's great. Let's begin." Old Taoist Ling Su is already getting impatient. These two are already in the boxing ring, yet they're still bickering. Is there any meaning to it? Bang! As soon as old Taoist finished speaking, Wang Sheng and Uncle Lee's fists collided. However, Wang Sheng used his left hand, while Uncle Lee used his right. Uncle Lee used almost all of his strength in the first punch. He wanted to knock Wang Sheng down with one punch. Wang Sheng, on the other hand, knew nothing about boxing. At the same time, he also used some Tai Chi techniques. His left hand received Uncle Lee's fist, and with a pull, the terrifying force was mostly neutralized by Wang Sheng. Following that, Wang Sheng's movements did not stop. With a hook with his right hand, he quickly struck Uncle Lee's left chin. A figure was sent flying. Pong! He crashed heavily into a thick wooden stake at the corner of the boxing ring, causing the wooden stake that was deeply embedded in the ground to shake off. I forgot to tell you, my strength is not small either. After sending Uncle Lee flying with a punch, Wang Sheng did not follow up with another attack. Instead, he stood where he was and spoke to Uncle Lee. Although Uncle Lee's spiritual energy was sealed when his body was attacked, the spiritual energy in his body would react naturally. Even with Wang Sheng's strength, it only made him dizzy for a moment before he returned to normal. Uncle Lee's body crashed into the wooden stake, and he felt a sharp pain in his back. He held onto the wooden stake and stood up. He could not believe that he had been sent flying by Wang Sheng. How was that possible? How many years had it been? Uncle Li had never felt like he was at a disadvantage. However, in just one day, he had been injured by old Taoist Ling Su's powerful cultivation. Then he was hit hard at the start of his boxing match with Wang Sheng. How could the proud and powerful Uncle Li tolerate this? Uncle Li shouted and rushed forward again. This time, he was prepared. Previously, he had underestimated Wang Sheng's cultivation. When he saw that Wang Sheng was only in the 5th stage, he had directly ignored him. However, he had forgotten that Wang Sheng was also strong enough. Without using his spiritual energy, the gap between him and Uncle Li's realm was not that big. Bang, 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 bang. Uncle Li and Wang Sheng were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Uncle Li's attacks were extremely sharp and fast. After a series of attacks, Wang Sheng could only raise his fist to protect his head, blocking all of Uncle Li's attacks. Meyer and Rosa watched as Wang Sheng was suppressed by Uncle Li. Both of their faces turned pale. However, old Taoist Ling Su was still standing firmly. It looked like Wang Sheng was in a difficult situation, but he was not hit at all. Every time Uncle Li's attack was either blocked by Wang Sheng's fists or pushed to the side by Wang Sheng's boxing gloves. It sounded like the fight was very lively, but Wang Sheng was only hit by his arms and fists. His head, chest, and abdomen were not hit at all. Uncle Li was very intoxicated by this feeling. Even though he knew that Wang Sheng did not suffer any physical injuries, the feeling of suppressing Wang Sheng to the point where he could not even move was too wonderful. Seeing Wang Sheng rushing left and right, unable to fend for himself, Uncle Li felt a burst of joy in his heart. As soon as this thought came to his mind, the sound of a fist hitting flesh immediately woke Uncle Li up. A strong force hit his stomach, and his body flew up involuntarily. Once again, he heavily crashed into a thick wooden pillar not far behind him. This time, the force was much stronger. Uncle Li's body hit the wooden stake. The wooden stake, which was thicker than Wang Sheng's thigh, broke with a crack. The rope that was tied to the wooden stake was also torn by the force. One by one, the rope broke. Uncle Li's body flew a few meters away after hitting the wooden stake. As soon as he got up, he could not help but retch. Wang Sheng's punch had hit his stomach. Even though Uncle Li's strong spiritual energy could protect his body from injury, he could not get rid of the violent reaction of being hit. How was this possible? Uncle Li was furious. He stood up and quickly adjusted his body's condition. Then, he rushed towards Wang Sheng again. A long time ago, Uncle Li's cultivation had already surpassed those experts in the 9th stage of the legendary realm. He was used to using his powerful cultivation to crush or defeat his opponents. When had he ever used such a close combat method? On this point, Uncle Li was inferior to old Taoist Ling Su. At the very least, old Taoist Ling Su had come into contact with Taiji over the years and had even studied it thoroughly. Uncle Li, on the other hand, had long forgotten that it required fighting techniques. Another storm of attacks came. This time, Wang Sheng could not block them fast enough. His head and body were hit a few times. However, Wang Sheng's powerful muscles provided him with a strong defense. Suddenly, he threw another punch, striking Uncle Li's chin once more. Uncle Li's body flew out like a cannonball. Bang! He smashed through the wall of the training room and fell heavily in the courtyard outside. When Uncle Li stood up again, old Taoist Ling Su was already standing beside him. He sighed. If I knew that you don't even know how to fight, I wouldn't have brought you along. How are you going to collect interest? If it were someone else, Uncle Li would have jumped up and killed him. However, he did not dare to refute old Taoist Ling Su's words. He could only look at Wang Sheng's figure in the training room with hatred. Forget it. You won't be able to collect interest even if you continue fighting. Old Taoist Ling Su shook his head and reached out to undo the spiritual energy seal on Uncle Li. Go. Remember what you promised. Go back and rest. Go to the concert in a few days. Chapter 895. With Uncle Li gone, how could he still have the face to stay in the Duke's mansion? With the old Taoist around, he did not dare to kill wantonly. He could only angrily leave the Duke's mansion and return to his own residence. Why didn't you kill him? When only the old Taoist, Mayer, and Rosa were left, Wang Sheng angrily asked the old Taoist, since you've already met him, why did you let go of such a good opportunity? Kill him? Old Taoist Ling Su rolled his eyes and said to Wang Sheng with dissatisfaction, isn't it because of you? Do you think I don't want to kill him? Because of me? Wang Sheng was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and asked, you're not thinking of using him to train me, are you? That's not a good idea. Bullsh asterisk T. Old Taoist Ling Su cursed. If it was because of this, I would have killed him long ago. Why would I wait until now? I didn't kill him because if I did, you'd have to face the retaliation of the entire carefree city. What's there to be afraid of? In the end, you'd still have to bear the consequences. Even if you hide in the grounds of despair, can you withstand the assassination of so many red card assassins in Carefree City? This reason was too strong. Even Wang Sheng knew that he could not fight against Carefree City head-on. Uncle Li's status in Carefree City was obvious just by looking at how he guarded the armory alone. If he really killed Uncle Li, the Carefree City Lord and the others would indeed go crazy. If the entire Carefree City really went crazy, not to mention Wang Sheng, even a big family like the Song family would probably have a headache. If that was the case, Uncle Li really could not be killed now. Damn it, Wang Sheng cursed. I'll kill him sooner or later. However, you don't dare to kill him, and he can't kill you now either. We're even. Old Taoist Ling Su comforted Wang Sheng. This guy's a man of his word. After the concert, I don't think the Carefree City Lord will let him touch you. That's the only way. Wang Sheng knew that this was the best result of balance. Wang Sheng was very touched that the old Taoist was so considerate of him. Uncle Li returned to his house alone with a fierce look on his face. As soon as he entered the door, the twin killers were shocked. There was an obvious bruise on Uncle Li's face. From the looks of it, it was obvious that he had been beaten by someone. Who would dare to hit Uncle Li in Beijing? Tell people not to keep an eye on Lone Wolf for the next few days. Uncle Li could not calm down after he returned. However, since he had already promised old Taoist Ling Su, Uncle Li was a man of his word. He immediately withdrew the people who were keeping an eye on Wang Sheng in Carefree City. Let's wait in the city and see what tricks he has up his sleeves at the concert. The two women hurriedly agreed, but their hearts were in turmoil. What kind of backer did Wang Sheng have? Why did Uncle Li return with a bloody nose and a swollen face? Even the people who were keeping an eye on him had to withdraw? This situation was too easy to guess. Wang Sheng's people must have made a move to teach Uncle Li a lesson, forcing Uncle Li to admit defeat. The problem was that they had personally witnessed how strong Uncle Li was. With the twins' telepathy, their strength was comparable to that of a peak legendary expert. However, they could not even walk away from Uncle Li, and that was when Uncle Li had shown mercy. What kind of cultivation did an expert who could beat Uncle Li black and blue have? In any case, as long as Uncle Li did not make a scene, the capital could basically be said to be peaceful. Everyone's focus was on the concert that would be held a few days later. What kind of tricks would there be in a concert that cost 10,000 gold coins? Before the concert began, something else happened in the capital that Wang Sheng did not expect. Ever since the two beautiful twin assassins of Carefree City showed off on the streets of the capital in skin-tight coats, shape-shifting trousers, and boots for 2 or 3 days, the reputation of the Dream Workshop, which was originally only popular in the capital's upper-class circle, began to spread to the common people. Naturally, ordinary people did not have the opportunity to see the things in the Dream Workshop. They did not even know which way the door of the Dream Workshop opened without passing by the beauty salon of Moisturizing Workshop. However, this did not stop some people from trying to enter the Dream Workshop. Among them, the most active were the top girls of the most famous brothels in the capital. Ever since the launch of Moisturizing Workshop, the first way to show off exquisite makeup to the public was through the brothels. It was no exception now. Ordinary people could not afford the Dream Workshop, but the top girls still had a background. Each of them had at least a few rich people behind them who were willing to promote them. In the past, No one would tell these brothel girls about the things in the dream workshop because they had not reached that level yet. However, when the twin assassins appeared on the streets in their outfits, it immediately caused a sensation. Naturally, these brothel girls began to ask about what exactly they were wearing. Then, they learned about the existence of the dream workshop from some big shots who visited the brothels. In less than 2 days, the top girls of the brothels began to receive customers in the dream workshop's outfits. In just 2 nights, the top girls of the brothels had earned more than 100,000 gold coins, and they were only selling their skills, not their bodies. When the bolder top girls of the brothels appeared on the streets in slightly more conservative outfits, the legend of the dream workshop gradually began to spread in the capital. In an instant, the dream workshop was upgraded to a shopping mecca comparable to moisturizing workshop for women. The sales of the dream workshop have increased by 30% these days. Mayor happily told Wang Sheng the good news as she looked at the report happily. Of course, the better news was that the sales of evening gowns for women had doubled in the past 2 days. It was said that the ladies who had received invitations were planning to wear them to the concert. In this regard, the ladies of the Dream Workshop had set a good example by wearing evening gowns to the few concerts they attended. Dream Workshop sales over the past few days had reached a new peak after the craziness during the first few days of its opening. Mayer and Rose were grinning from ear to ear from the overflowing gold coins. Under the watchful eyes of the public, the day of the concert finally arrived. The entire Royal Theatre was tightly surrounded by thousands of royal guards that morning. Without tickets, it was impossible to get within 100 meters of the theater. When there was still an hour before the concert began, people began to arrive one after another. The representatives of the various vassal states, the relatives of the royal family who were close to the emperor, and the experts that the imperial palace had secretly trained had all arrived in advance. Uncle Li had also arrived with a group of experts from the worry-free city. The ordinary experts sat in the hall, while Uncle Li and a few experts sat in their private rooms. Wang Sheng's group, Song Yan's group, and the emperor's group arrived almost at the same time. The emperor specially greeted Song Yan before everyone entered their private rooms and waited for the concert to begin. Chapter 896. Interestingly enough, Song Yan was also wearing a gown from Dream Workshop to the party. Mayer and Rosa were no exception. The two of them seemed to be competing with Song Yan in terms of attractiveness, wearing unique styles. At least in this aspect, Song Yan's clothes could not be compared to the two ladies. Her Majesty, the Empress, was also very gracious. She appeared in an evening gown designed by Wang Sheng. Of course, no one could see it when they were outside. They only took off their cloaks when they got out of their cars or entered the Grand Theater. Although it was a concert, everyone was actually very careful. Every family had their own private room. The important figures were in their own private rooms. No one would see each other, and no one would get in the way. The guards of each family guarded their private rooms tightly. No one wanted to be attacked while enjoying the concert. The audience in the hall had been warned before they set off not to cause trouble. Otherwise, no one would be able to get out of here alive. In the entire Royal Theatre, the only people who could walk back and forth between the private rooms were probably Wang Sheng and Mayer and Rosa. This time, Wang Sheng was the host, so everyone gave him face. He greeted the Emperor, the Empress, and the 3 great consecrators at the Emperor's side. He greeted Song Yan at the Emperor's side. Wang Sheng even specially went to the Carefree City's side to greet Uncle Li before going to the other boxes to greet them. By the time Wang Sheng returned to his private room, it was almost time. During the greeting, Wang Sheng mainly informed everyone that the concert might last for a long time and asked them not to be surprised or panic. Anyway, everyone was confused and did not know why. Could it be that the band had practiced many new songs? Master Yu appeared with a group of great masters. The appearance of the band caused a commotion. Some of the audience had seen the concert before, but the Royal Symphony Orchestra was not like them. Not only that, but there were also many more musicians than these people. What kind of musicians had been replaced? Those who knew would not say, but those who did not know were discussing. However, when Master Yu led the musicians to take their seats and bow, the audience quickly quietened down. Since they were all upper-class people, they naturally had to maintain elegant etiquette. Even the assassins of the worry-free city had to restrain their rustic manners and sit upright. As Master Yu waved the baton, the music started. From the first sound, all of the formations in the Royal Theatre began to vibrate harmoniously. Every member of the audience who was lucky enough to be able to enter trembled. Then, under everyone's dumbfounded expressions, a slow and melodious music drifted out from the instruments of a group of great grandmasters. The spiritual energy in everyone's body also began to flow along with the slow and melodious music. The Emperor and the three great consecrators had heard the Royal Symphony Orchestra's performance before, but now that the grandmasters had made their moves, they realized that something was wrong. It was not that the song was wrong, but the effect was too strong. The Grandmaster Orchestra's performance was indeed extraordinary. It was no wonder Wang Sheng had strongly suggested it. It was the first time for Song Yan's team and Uncle Li's team. As soon as the spiritual energy in their bodies moved, they immediately realized that something was wrong. The difference was that Song Yin trusted Wang Sheng, so she did not put up any resistance and let the spiritual energy flow along with the rhythm of the music. Uncle Li did not trust Wang Sheng that much. When he realized the spiritual energy was moving, his instinctive reaction was to immediately circulate his energy to resist it. Luckily, the spiritual energy was not lethal, nor did it carry any killing intent. Otherwise, Uncle Li might have exploded. On the contrary, the twin beautiful assassins did not care. They had long heard about the effects of the concert, and they were much more open-minded than Uncle Li. With so many people and so many forces, Wang Sheng would not want to capture everyone, including the Emperor, in one fell swoop. Therefore, they naturally let down their defenses and allowed the music to guide them in their cultivation. In fact, Uncle Li had also heard about the magical effects of the concert, but he was instinctively on guard against Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su. He still could not let it go. As for the other representatives, some had experienced the effects of the concert before, while some had experienced it for the first time. Relatively speaking, these people did not have any direct hatred towards Wang Sheng, so they trusted Wang Sheng more. They all opened their arms and quietly enjoyed the feeling of the music guiding them in their cultivation. The rhythm of the first song was more relaxed. Just as Wang Sheng and Master Yu had discussed, it was for everyone to warm up. However, except for Uncle Li, who could resist it instinctively, by the time the first song was finished, the spiritual energy in their bodies had basically been flowing along with the music for 2 weekday. The rhythm of the second song was slightly faster, but it was still melodious and slow. Other than Uncle Li, who was still resisting and did not join the cultivation, everyone else was already immersed in enjoying the beautiful music while enjoying the comfortable feeling of the spiritual energy flowing in their bodies. When the third song was finished, which was slightly faster, old Taoist Ling Su realized that the cultivation rhythm of everyone in the theater had been completely driven by the three songs. Other than Uncle Li, who was a little uncomfortable, everyone else's cultivation rhythm was almost exactly the same. Then, at the start of the fourth song, Song Yin broke through and successfully stepped into the 8th stage from the peak of the 7th stage. She triggered the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to temper her body. Countless spiritual energy poured into her body and began to strengthen it. This was only the beginning. Before the fourth piece was finished, the number of people who had broken through had increased to 4, triggering even more spiritual qi of heaven and earth, forming a large mass of spiritual qi in the middle of the Royal Theatre, wrapping everyone inside. When Song Yin had just broken through, Uncle Li could still forcibly resist the spiritual energy that was driven by the rhythm of the music. However, when 4 people started breaking through one after another, he felt that his control had dropped to an indescribable level. This caused Uncle Li to be extremely terrified. He wanted to withdraw his control, but now he realized that because he had resisted at the beginning, he had been led by the rhythm of the music into a rhythm that resisted the spirit energy ball. He was actually unable to control it. Wang Sheng no longer cared about Uncle Li. From the beginning, Wang Sheng had been slowly experimenting with a 4-syllable mantra along with the rhythm. He tried all kinds of combinations, and it was extremely smooth. Halfway through the fifth song, Wang Sheng could no longer control himself and was led by the spiritual energy ball to break through again. Countless spiritual energy began to pour into Wang Sheng's body, and it was incomparably huge. At this time, according to old Taoist Ling Su, there were already 9 people who had broken through, and the music was still going on, getting faster and faster. Chapter 897. The sixth song with a brisk rhythm began. In each song, several people were in a state of breakthrough, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth they triggered was simply overwhelming. The entire area within a radius of 200 meters around the Royal Theatre was enveloped in a vast mass of spiritual chi. The density of the spiritual chi in the theater was so high that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that it absorbed from the surroundings could not immediately merge with the Royal Theatre and could only condense outside. The Imperial Guards who were waiting outside the Royal Theatre were in luck. Even though they were not the main source of such a vast amount of spiritual chi standing in this area, they could more or less absorb a portion of it. Uncle Lee began to regret his decision. Now he was fighting against all the people in the theater by himself. Among them, more than 300 were in the legendary realm, and more than 100 were in the process of breaking through. The density of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was so great that even Uncle Lee was dumbfounded. What was more terrifying was that, under the guidance of the rhythm of the music, the Royal Theatre had become a huge spiritual chi ball, and the breathing rhythm of this spiritual chi ball was exactly the same. With the amplification of the formation and the music, it was more than 10 times more powerful than a simple superposition. Uncle Lee had to fight against such a terrifying spiritual chi ball alone. Even though he was a super expert who had already surpassed the legendary realm, it was impossible for him to fight against so many people. Not to mention, among so many people, there was also old Taoist Ling Su. Just the old Taoist alone could easily crush him to death. After being strengthened, Uncle Lee felt despair just thinking about it. Seeing that Uncle Lee was about to be crushed by this huge spiritual chi ball, Uncle Lee fell into regret and despair. Suddenly, he heard a heavenly voice scolding, "Stupid!" The spiritual energy in his body seemed to have been pushed by an extremely powerful force. The spiritual energy in his body, which had been resisting the spiritual energy ball, was suddenly dispersed by this push and could no longer be condensed. Soon after, the dispersed spiritual chi began to circulate in his body according to the rhythm of the music. Phew! At this moment, Uncle Lee finally heaved a sigh of relief. At the very least, he wouldn't be crushed by the spiritual energy gathered by so many people. The despair he felt in the face of death was something Uncle Lee had never felt before. Even when he was fighting with old Taoist Ling Su, although the old Taoist cultivation level was much higher than his, Uncle Lee did not feel the fear of death. At that moment, Uncle Lee really had 1 foot over the line of death. Even now, Uncle Lee felt that his legs were weak. If he hadn't been sitting, Uncle Lee might have collapsed to the ground. As the spiritual energy in his body was attracted by the rhythm of the music, Uncle Lee's rhythm soon caught up with the rhythm of the crowd and the music. Then, Uncle Lee began to feel a different feeling of cultivation. It was an unprecedented experience to cultivate with 1,000 people at the same pace, especially when more than 100 of them were breaking through and tempering their bodies with spiritual energy. Even if they didn't break through, they could still enjoy the benefits of breaking through. A huge amount of spiritual energy washed through their bodies, and it was simply increasing their cultivation for no reason. Uncle Lee was so stupid that he didn't believe in Wang Sheng and insisted on going against him. Wang Sheng could invite all the forces in the world, including the emperor and Song Yin, who was close to him. Even Wang Sheng himself and old Taoist Ling Su were among them. How could he use such an arrangement to plot against others? It was laughable that he had overestimated himself and wanted to go against everyone, including old Taoist Ling Su. The old Taoist could kill him several times by himself, yet he still had to resort to such tricks. If he really wanted to kill him, He would have died countless times in the woods and in the Duke's mansion when his spiritual energy was sealed. While regretting, Uncle Lee began to enjoy the rhythm of the music. When he was immersed in the music, Uncle Lee realized how beautiful it was. He could completely feel the emotions that the music was trying to express by following the melody. This was a feeling that Uncle Lee had never felt before. Uncle Lee was a martial arts fanatic. Other than cultivation and killing, Uncle Lee couldn't be bothered with anything else. How could Uncle Lee appreciate music in the past? This kind of moaning and groaning thing would spoil his mood. But now, music could actually bring enjoyment to Uncle Lee. How is this possible? Even Uncle Lee himself was surprised, but he couldn't help but feel ecstatic. He could actually enter this level of cultivation with the music. This meant that this level of music could help him make another breakthrough in his cultivation. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have resisted just now and wasted such a great opportunity. Uncle Lee couldn't care less about his regrets. He was completely immersed in the music. A martial arts fanatic was a martial arts fanatic. When he was completely immersed in cultivation, the despair, regret, fear, and other emotions that he had felt at the moment of life and death began to replay in his mind. For Uncle Lee, this was a rare moment of life and death, and it was greatly beneficial to his cultivation. As Uncle Lee also joined in the cultivation of the spiritual energy ball, the last bit of disharmony in the theater disappeared without a trace. The spiritual energy ball began to move twice as fast as when Uncle Lee resisted, and it led everyone into the most mysterious cultivation. During this period of time, a few people's cultivation increased crazily and then broke through. The total number of people who had broken through had already exceeded 180. The spiritual energy ball had already become so thick that it was starting to become viscous. If everyone was conscious when the spiritual energy entered their bodies, they would probably go crazy from excitement. Wang Sheng remained conscious. He tried out the 4-syllable mantra while sensing the state of everyone in the royal theater. Old Taoist Ling Su was also conscious. If he hadn't rescued Uncle Lee from that state, Uncle Lee would have been turned into a meat patty. Unfortunately, when so many people were breaking through and cultivating at the same time, if something like that happened, everyone would be affected. Those with low cultivation might even explode and die. For everyone's sake, old Taoist Ling Su had no choice but to save Uncle Lee. If it really didn't affect him, he wouldn't care if he died. Time flew by, and before the audience realized it, the repertoire of the concert, which lasted for more than 2 hours, had been completed once. Fortunately, Master Yu had experienced it once. Without hesitation, he directed the musicians to start the cycle. As long as the spiritual energy ball hadn't dissipated and the body tempering process hadn't been completed, they would continue playing. When Wang Sheng reached the middle of the second cycle, he suddenly felt a familiar aura. It was the aura of the mind-guarding meditation technique. Chapter 898. The mind of calmness was a special technique for the royal family. It was meant for the important members of the royal family to practice. It was used to improve one's brain power, lifespan, and physical condition. It was not meant for fighting and killing. There were quite a few members of the royal family present. Especially after Wang Sheng's reminder, the emperor pulled over all the loyal and close members of the royal family. There were at least a few dozen of them. With so many people practicing the same technique, it brought about the same effect as the old Taoist of the Qing generation. Everyone could almost share their own cultivation experience. However, the realms of the mind of calmness in the royal family were different. They could not reach the same cultivation level as the old Taoist of the Qing generation. Therefore, the comprehension was not particularly clear. At least among the royal family, there were only a few who could feel the shared aura of cultivation. Wang Sheng kept his mind clear. The mantra of 9 words allowed Wang Sheng to clearly feel the cultivation aura related to him. Therefore, Wang Sheng could feel it clearly too. Acutely capturing the cultivation experience that was not particularly clear, Wang Sheng verified it with his own cultivation bit by bit. Even though the average cultivation level of the dozens of members of the royal family in the Mind of Calmness was only average, they were much stronger than Wang Sheng, who had just started practicing for a short period of time. There were many experiences that Wang Sheng could directly learn from. While tempering his body with spiritual energy, trying out the mantra of 4 words, and absorbing the cultivation experience of the Mind of Calmness, he almost did not feel the passage of time. By the time Wang Sheng had eagerly absorbed the cultivation experience of the Mind of Calmness, Wang Sheng realized that, Master, you had already started the 3rd cycle with the orchestra. In other words, from the beginning until now, at least 6 hours had passed. Taking advantage of the great opportunity of tempering his body with spiritual energy, Wang Sheng decisively changed the Mind of Calmness to a simple Mind of Calmness. Then, he began to practice according to the cultivation experience he had just absorbed. This time, Wang Sheng could finally feel the genius cultivation speed of the old Taoist Ling Su in a small area. After practicing the Mind of Calmness for less than an hour, the first effect of the Mind of Calmness had already been achieved. Wang Sheng felt that his mind was unprecedentedly agile. It was as if no matter what problem he faced, as long as he focused, he would be able to find a clear thread through his messy thoughts. Then, he would be able to find a solution from within. Whether the solution was efficient or not, or whether it would always work, it was a solution that had the possibility of being implemented. Moreover, there was more than one solution. Wang Sheng could find a most suitable one from dozens of possibilities. Perhaps this was the effect of the Mind of Calmness. No wonder old Taoist Ling Su immediately went into seclusion to comprehend the Tai Chi Dao Canopy Heart Sutra after cultivating it. This kind of efficient calculation ability really made people unable to extricate themselves. Now that the effect had been achieved, Wang Sheng did not continue greedily. The second effect could not be completed while tempering his body with spiritual energy. Pursuing it blindly would affect his combat prowess. Therefore, after achieving the first effect, Wang Sheng switched back to the Tao Canon's tranquil heart technique. The sudden increase in his brain power made Wang Sheng's analysis of the 4-syllable Sanskrit much more efficient. As a result, the speed of his experiments with the 4-syllable Sanskrit increased rapidly. If Wang Sheng calculated according to the 30 hours of body tempering last time, he could completely experiment with all the 4-syllable Sanskrit. Old Taoist Ling Su was clear-headed. He was overseeing the whole situation and not letting any accidents happen to the people present. At the same time, he was using the collective cultivation of thousands of people and the breakthrough opportunities of nearly 200 people to enrich his accumulation and increase his experience. At his level, it was extremely difficult to make a breakthrough. Fortunately, old Taoist Ling Su knew that with Tai Chi, the 9-syllable Sanskrit, the Mind of Calmness, the Tao Te Ching, and the rebellious Tao, the old Taoist was expected to reach another level within a few years and become an unprecedented 13th-stage expert. However, this could not be rushed. It required enough patience and a calm mind. The old Taoist was not in a hurry. He just needed to accumulate slowly. He could also take this opportunity to carefully experience the cultivation experience of various experts. If Wang Sheng could vaguely feel the sharing of cultivation, the old Taoist could even more so. Apart from the little disturbance caused by Uncle Li, the process of tempering his body with spiritual energy could be said to be step by step, and success came naturally. The Imperial Guards outside were very strict. None of the experts inside intended to sacrifice their lives to affect others, so everything went very smoothly. The only problem was that it took a long time. More than 20 hours had passed, but the Royal Theater was still not open. The commander of the Imperial Guards outside had been warned by Steward Li before the start not to disturb the cultivation of the people inside, no matter what, even if it lasted for 2 days or more. The commander was very obedient and loyal to the Emperor. At this moment, he did not relax at all. Thousands of Imperial Guards took turns to guard, ensuring that no one outside could come close to cause trouble. Under such a harmonious situation, The body tempering triggered by more than 180 people finally came to an end. At this moment, 40 hours had passed since the concert started. It was longer than the time at the small theater previously. When the body tempering was completed, Master Yu was the first to feel the change in the mass of spiritual energy. He finally commanded the group of great grandmasters to stop the music. However, this was not the end. The mass of spiritual energy was still there. It was just that there was no replenishment from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The music stopped, but everyone was still in the state of absorbing spiritual energy. They waited until they enjoyed the final aftertaste and completely absorbed the mass of spiritual energy in the Royal Theater. When the spiritual energy outside returned to normal, everyone woke up at this moment. The first thing Wang Sheng did when he woke up was to ask Mer to call on the nursing staff that had been prepared in advance. They carried the exhausted Master Yu and the group of great grandmasters back to the Duke's mansion on stretchers after playing for more than 40 hours. They were nourished with the best tonics and helped to rest. No one was a fool. Even though the audience in the Royal Theater was completely immersed in the music and cultivation, they knew clearly what happened during that period. They did not even miss the melody of the music. Under such circumstances, how could the audience not be grateful to the great grandmasters who were almost risking their lives? With the emperor taking the lead, all the audience stood up and sent all the great grandmasters off with the warmest applause. Even Uncle Li, who was the most indifferent at the beginning, was the same. In this feast of cultivation and spiritual energy, Uncle Li had gained a huge advantage. Only when all the martial grandmasters had left did the entire Royal Theater erupt with uncontrollable cries of surprise. Chapter 899. Most of the exclamations were due to the fact that their cultivation had increased by a large margin. The other reason was that they were surprised that they could break through under such circumstances and successfully trigger the spiritual qi to temper their bodies. It must be known that everyone's cultivation breakthroughs would only be carried out in an absolutely safe environment. This Royal Theater was clearly the territory of the royal family and Wang Sheng. The people from the various feudal vassals were all shocked that they could not help but break through in such an environment. No matter what, a breakthrough was a breakthrough. It was a good thing to increase one's realm. Then, everyone began to be shocked by the crazy effect of this concert. Wang Sheng walked onto the stage under the gaze of thousands of people. It was originally the place where Master Yu and the band were, but now was empty. When Wang Sheng walked up, no one stopped him. Everyone knew that he was the manager of the Royal Theater and definitely had something to say. How does it feel to break through with 187 people? Wang Sheng's voice did not need to be too loud. It was transmitted to everyone's ears through the array of the Royal Theater. It was very clear. At this time, everyone was surprised to find out that 187 people had broken through during the cultivation state just now. At first, it sounded normal, but after thinking about it carefully, everyone was shocked. More than 180 people broke through at the same time? What kind of grand scene was this? It's already been 2 days and 2 nights. It won't hinder everyone from going back to rest. Please leave in order. Wang Shi did not say much. No matter how much he said, it would not be as shocking as these people who had thought about it themselves. Therefore, he only politely asked everyone to leave. Remember to send the gold coins to the Duke's residence after this. Before leaving, Wang Sheng reminded everyone, "This time, I only took 10,000 gold coins from everyone. Next time, it will not be this price. I think it's not too much to charge 100,000 gold coins for each Grandmaster's band, right? If they could trigger such a number of experts to break through every time, not to mention 100,000 gold coins, even if it was higher, everyone would be willing to fork out more." At least from the conversation just now, everyone understood that at least one expert in the 8th realm had broken through to the legendary realm. How much was a legendary expert worth? If a mere 100,000 gold coins could be exchanged for a legendary expert, then everyone would probably be willing to book the entire place. This time, almost all the forces in the world participated. Everyone was waiting for the specific report, so there was no disturbance in the theater. Everyone quietly left. Before Uncle Lee left, It was clear that he had wanted to say something. However, when he saw Wang Sheng standing far away on the platform, he scoffed and shook his head. Then, he decisively led the experts of Carefree City away. Song Yin, on the other hand, had a strange expression on her face as she waited in her seat. It seemed that she had something to say. The emperor happily left with the empress. When he left Steward Zhou behind. He probably wanted to tell Wang Sheng some things. In the end, only the people from the Duke's mansion and the Kingdom of Song were left. Wang Sheng walked to the entrance of the theater and waited for Song Yin. When will the Royal Academy of Arts start recruiting disciples? Song Yin's eyes shone brightly. At the 8th stage, she looked even more valiant. The first thing he asked was Wang Sheng. Send them over. Wang Sheng smiled and replied, anytime. Song Yin left with her people in satisfaction. Steward Zhou also came over and looked at Wang Sheng. The first thing he said was to congratulate him. Congratulations on recovering your cultivation, Duke. Wang Sheng had advanced again and returned to the 6th stage. This was similar to his previous cultivation. Moreover, because he had started cultivating again, his foundation had become more solid. His 6th stage cultivation was similar to his previous 7th stage cultivation. That was why Steward Zhou thought so. Congratulations to you too. Wang Sheng replied with a smile. This kind of opportunity doesn't need too many. Just give it another 3 or 4 times, and I'm sure the 3 of you will get what you want. Steward Zhou had nothing to hide from Wang Sheng. He also smiled and nodded. Then he said to Wang Sheng, His Majesty asked me to thank you on his behalf. This time, His Majesty was lucky enough to break through with the help of the Master's performances. From now on, His Majesty is also a legendary master. This was something Wang Sheng didn't expect. Even the Emperor had broken through. But this was a good thing. He believed that after this, no one in the Royal Academy of Arts would stop him. No one would dare to stop him. As for those musicians, no one dared to look down on them. This was something that Master Yu and the others had been looking forward to for a long time. He believed that they would be very happy. Wang Sheng had advanced to the 6th stage. The change was actually not that big. The main reason was that Wang Sheng was recovering and not advancing for the first time. It was nothing more than his acupuncture points becoming bigger, his spiritual energy becoming purer and thicker, and his cultivation becoming deeper. Of course, there were also changes in the spirit space. The spiritual liquid in the big pool was already a finger deep. The sensational concert that cost 10,000 gold coins per ticket had come to an end just like that. Who knew how many people were waiting to know the inside story? But none of the people who participated had revealed what had happened. The first thing that the various leaders did when they returned to their respective stations was to order their subordinates to immediately send the gold coins to the Duke's palace. They could only send more, not less. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to hope for this kind of pure, grand master band performance in the future. This kind of good thing that they would rather be struck by lightning. Who would go against the Duke because of a mere gold coin? Or would there be people who dared to go against the Duke because of this? Wang Sheng didn't even need to do it himself. There were people who were willing to get rid of a group of people who owed the Duke tickets, and then buy those people's tickets at double the price. The number of messenger birds that day was several times more than before. The representatives of the major vassal states recorded everything that happened in the Royal Grand Theater in detail and then sent a large number of them back. The things that happened in those 2 days were too shocking. On average, there were at least 2 to 3 people who had a breakthrough. Some of them weren't even on the verge of breakthrough. They were purely driven by the strong spiritual energy and forcibly increased their cultivation. Then they reached the point of a breakthrough. Almost every representative suggested to the various kings that they must seize every opportunity to have a grand master performance. They must not miss it. They even strongly suggested that all parties must quickly send people to the Royal Academy of Arts to learn music. This time, the one who benefited the most was the royal family. There were a total of 500 people, and only about 100 people had advanced. Next was the Song family. Song Yin represented the Song family had 100 experts, and there were more than 20 who had broken through. The rest were the various families, with a total of a few dozen people. But after this time, everyone knew that there was a new professional force that was about to rise. Chapter 900. Just like alchemists, doctors, and formation masters, from now on, musicians would also step onto the stage of cultivation. They would become an influential force that all parties would fight to rope in. Fortunately, Wang Sheng was the only one who had control of this force. Based on their interactions over the years, Wang Sheng was someone who was willing to share as long as he had enough gold coins. Therefore, the parties did not act as they did in the past and either kill him or seize control of him. Uncle Li was the one who suffered the most. His original intention in coming to the capital was to kill Wang Sheng. Even if he could not do it, he wanted to teach Wang Sheng an unforgettable lesson and make Wang Sheng live in fear of being hunted down by Uncle Li. But now, the situation had completely changed. First, Uncle Li was forced by old Taoist Ling Su not to attack Wang Sheng. Then, Wang Sheng taught Uncle Li a lesson in boxing. Now, Wang Sheng came up with a heaven-defying weapon, causing Uncle Li to not dare to attack Wang Sheng. Even without the pressure from old Taoist Ling Su, Uncle Li did not dare to attack Wang Sheng. If he attacked Wang Sheng now, he would become the enemy of the whole world. Although Uncle Li was arrogant, he was not so arrogant that he dared to challenge the whole world. Not to mention Uncle Li, even the entire Carefree City would not dare to act rashly. Uncle Li knew very well that once he sent the news back to Carefree City, the City Lord would soon change his attitude towards Wang Sheng and return to the path of cooperation with Wang Sheng. In other words, Uncle Li would not be able to vent his anger for a very long time. That day, when he returned to his residence, Uncle Li smashed the house into pieces. He dragged the twin killers and ravaged the house for the whole night. Only then did his anger subside. Although he was angry, Uncle Li had to admit that this wonderful concert was simply a magic treasure that stimulated his cultivation. Uncle Li had been stuck in this realm for many years, but after listening to the concert, he realized that his realm had loosened. If it wasn't for the fact that Uncle Li insisted on resisting the effects of the music at the beginning, perhaps Uncle Li could have touched the edge of that realm. Perhaps Uncle Li could have reached the level of old Taoist Ling Su. Uncle Li felt indescribable regret when he thought about how he had missed such a great opportunity because of his irrationality. If he had known this would happen, he would not have done it. If he had known that Wang Sheng had such a heaven-defying item, he would not have had to go through all that trouble back at the armory. At the end of the day, Uncle Li wasn't in the right. He was just relying on his own strength to cause trouble. If he was in the right, Uncle Li would have been scolded by others long ago. Even Uncle Li knew that even though the Carefree City Lord had chosen to stand on his side in the end, he was extremely unwilling to do so. Uncle Li's status and strength were more important to the Carefree City Lord. Otherwise, the City Lord would have stood by Wang Sheng's side a long time ago, given their close relationship. Now that he had this group of old men, Wang Sheng was in an invincible position. After Uncle Li vented and thought about it, he knew that he had no choice but to lower his head for the time being. Even if it meant that he could get into the next concert, Uncle Li had to endure it. The day after the concert, Song Yin sent an invitation to Wang Sheng to visit her residence. Song Yin had already treated the courtyard near the Royal Academy of Arts as her residence in the capital. Mei Er's face was filled with reluctance, but she could not stop him. She could only watch helplessly as Wang Sheng scraped her little jade nose and left the Duke's mansion to attend the meeting. She was unhappy for most of the day. This time, Wang Sheng went openly. He did not even bring old Taoist Ling Su with him. He only brought a few disciples and guards from the temple of the Laojun. When they arrived at the Song residence, the guards were warmly received. Wang Sheng went straight to the backyard. Song Yin was still as proactive as ever. She pushed Wang Sheng down a few times before curling into Wang Sheng's arms in satisfaction. "I have to go," Song Yin said softly. She was full of reluctance. "Okay." Wang Sheng knew that Song Yin would leave sooner or later. Her intense actions just now were already a sign of something, so he was not surprised. Reaching out and gently caressing Song Yan's smooth shoulder, Wang Sheng said with pity, Don't tire yourself out too much. Song Yin nodded in agreement. After that, the two didn't say anything else. They just quietly hugged each other, feeling each other's heartbeat. After a long time, Song Yin slowly got up from Wang Sheng's embrace. She leaned over and gently pecked Wang Sheng on the lips. Only then did she pull Wang Sheng to the back to take a bath and change clothes. Next time, will there be another opportunity, like dividing victorious return? Song Yin asked when the two of them sat down together again. Hard to say. Wang Sheng shook his head. Even if there is, I don't recommend Song Empire participate. Why? Song Yin asked curiously. Annexing territory will disperse our strength. Wang Sheng calmly explained, I have a feeling that the core of the land of Thousand Despair will not be peaceful for long. Speaking of the core of the land of Thousand Despair, Song Yin no longer had any doubts. Reaping the greatest benefits from the land of Thousand Despair was far better than seizing a bit more territory at this time. The Song clan originally had a base of operations. Later, with Wang Sheng's permission, they opened up another one. They already had an advantage in terms of strength, so there was no need to disperse their strength and turn it into a disadvantage. Song Yan's movements were quick. While she and Wang Sheng were entangled, her subordinates had already packed up their things and were ready to leave. When Song Shengnan came in to report that the young miss was almost ready, Song Yin threw herself into Wang Sheng's arms again and kissed him deeply. Beside her, Song Shengnan hurriedly covered her eyes, her face completely red. Song Yan's lips parted from Wang Sheng's, and she pouted as she requested, From now on, you have to give me a fitting piece of clothing from Dream Workshop. Okay. Wang Sheng agreed without hesitation. Song Yin took the initiative to kiss him deeply again. Then, she neatly pushed Wang Sheng away and walked out the door. Song Shengnan hurriedly bowed to Wang Sheng, then quickly followed Song Yin out of the room. Song Yin left just like that. She left without hesitation. Wang Sheng was a little reluctant, but Wang Sheng also knew that Song Yin would not stay. Even if this was Wang Sheng's territory, Song Yin might not stay, let alone the emperor's territory. Back at the duke's mansion, Wang Sheng saw Mayor waiting in the living room. When she saw Wang Sheng return, Mayor happily walked up to him, but immediately frowned. She was the owner of Moisturizing Workshop. How could Wang Sheng's strong perfume escape Mayor's nose? Song Yin left. Wang Sheng said to Mayor with a smile, She shouldn't have come. Mayor pouted unhappily, then pushed Wang Sheng into the shower without a care in the world. After Wang Sheng had to take another shower with the help of a maid, he was pushed into the bedroom by Mayor. Before he entered, Wang Sheng found that Rosa was already lying in the bedroom, waiting for him. Chapter 901. Duke. Rosa blushed and stood up to welcome Wang Sheng into the bedroom. At this moment, Rosa was wearing sexy lingerie with the least amount of fabric produced by the Dream Workshop. She was accompanied by a dozen sisters from the Wang residence who were also wearing underwear. She helped Wang Sheng to sit on the bedside. Duke, I will serve you to sleep. Rosa was very proactive today, which surprised Wang Sheng. However, he wasn't surprised. Mayor's emotions were written on her face today. She must be very displeased that Wang Sheng went to Song Yan's appointment. Mayor had no choice but to get Rosa to help her. What about the rest of you? Wang Sheng and Rosa had already bowed to the Duke, so they didn't care. However, the dozen sisters around them weren't the ones he had served before. Wang Sheng remembered them very clearly. My sisters have already made love with Rosa. One of the beauties who was only wearing a thin veil smiled and replied, Duke, you don't have to care about us sisters. Wang Sheng's expression changed instantly. The last time Rosa made love with more than 20 sisters, the consequence was that the Inchi was too strong and almost caused an accident. Again? Don't worry, Duke. Rosa leaned close to Wang Sheng's ear and whispered, My realm has increased, so nothing will happen. Isn't Duke having too much yang qi to balance? Duke, please don't disappoint the sisters' good intentions. Upon hearing this, Wang Sheng completely understood that this was definitely Mei Er's idea. Of course, Tantai Yao was the one who pushed it. Tantai Yao was eager to push all the women in the Wang residence onto Wang Sheng's bed. He really didn't understand what she was thinking. Fortunately, she was worried about Wang Sheng's thoughts now. She had sex with Wang Sheng through Rosa, so Wang Sheng didn't behave like a beast. Does the old Taoist allow you to fool around like this? Wang Sheng asked with a wry smile as he hugged Rosa. Mayer argued with the Taoist priest for 2 hours. Rosa squeezed her body closer to Wang Sheng and said with a smile, Taoist priest didn't say anything after that. He only said that he would go back to Laojun Temple for a few days. This time, Wang Sheng completely understood. Mayer must have used the old Taoist Yang Qi to add trouble to Wang Sheng and persuaded the old Taoist. In fact, the old Taoist had been a little upset about this matter. Now that Mei-er had a ready-made solution, and under Mei-er's insistence, the old Taoist couldn't continue to stop her. He could only leave the Duke's residence for the time being. Rosa, let the sisters leave. You can do it alone. At this point, what else could Wang Sheng say? He could only sigh and let Rosa send the sisters away, leaving Rosa alone. If it wasn't for the fact that Rosa's yin qi was too strong and couldn't move, she didn't need so many people to take care of her. Rosa alone was enough. In the midst of Rosa's suppressed happy moans, Wang Sheng felt a cool yin qi enter his body. Then, along the path of the acupuncture points, each acupuncture point was separated a little, and finally, all of them were scattered in Wang Sheng's acupuncture points. You used heaven and earth reversal? Wang Sheng was very surprised. This time, Rosa didn't let Wang Sheng use heaven and earth reversal like how Wang Sheng used to suppress the yin qi for Rosa. She actually used this trick on Wang Sheng. Duke, I also want to practice the Yongchun mantra. Rosa smiled very happily and very satisfied. In addition to physical satisfaction, she felt a burst of happiness when she saw Wang Sheng's concerned expression. Seeing that Wang Sheng was worried, she smiled and explained, I have to go through this. Moreover, the hundreds of sisters in the mansion can help me recover. Thinking of the strange secret of practicing the Yongchun mantra, Wang Sheng couldn't help but be speechless. Since Rosa had a follow-up supplement, and it was also a cultivation need, Wang Sheng didn't blame Rosa on this matter. However, when he saw Mei-er, Wang Sheng couldn't help but complain. I don't care about Sister Rosa's body. Mei-er smiled sweetly at Wang Sheng. Duke, don't worry. Sister Rosa won't be hurt. On the other hand, you, Duke, will have to trouble Sister Rose. Trouble? Wang Sheng was stunned. I've talked to the Taoist. Either you balance your yin and yang, or you let all the sisters in the mansion go through it and balance as much as you can. Seeing that Wang Sheng was in a daze, Mei couldn't help but smile and explain, if you don't want to have sex with the sisters in the mansion, then I can only trouble Sister Rosa to do it for you. Puff! Wang Sheng sprayed out the tea in his mouth. Wang Sheng was well aware of the problems in his body, and old Taoist Ling Su was probably aware of it as well. Based on the current situation, even if all the women in Wang Sheng's residence were to go through them, they would only be able to balance out 80% of the yang energy in Wang Sheng's body. No wonder old Taoist Ling Su hid back in the Laojun Temple. Out of sight, out of mind. He couldn't win against Mei-er, so he could only escape. Thinking that Rosa was alone and had to have sex with hundreds of sisters in the same way, Wang Sheng couldn't help but smile bitterly for Rosa. The problem was, could he replace Rosa? The Taoists said that hundreds of sisters have impure breaths, and it's better to be purified by Sister Rosa. Mei-er seemed to know what Wang Sheng was thinking, so she said directly, it's good for both you and Sister Rosa, and it's also good for you. Although Mei-er was smiling as she spoke, Wang Sheng could hear the self-blame in her voice for not being able to help. He couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. He pulled Mei-er to his side and held her in his arms. Duke, please don't blame me. Mei-er was so happy that she was about to explode, but she still admitted her mistake. I just think of Duke and Miss Song, and I feel very uncomfortable. Silly girl. Wang Sheng knew that Mei-er was jealous, so he sighed and tightened his arms. Mei-er's face suddenly beamed with joy, and she moved her body closer to make herself more comfortable. While Wang Sheng was indulging in Mei Er's softness and Rose's gentleness, the outside world had been in an uproar because of the concert. Many people regretted that they didn't spend 10,000 gold coins to buy the tickets, and all the feudal lords went crazy when they heard the news. One concert, 187 masters made breakthroughs. What would happen if they booked the whole place? Not every participant was a master who was about to make a breakthrough. If they were all masters who were in a bottleneck, wouldn't they all have to make a breakthrough? How many benefits would the Reiki balls caused by so many people's Reiki tempering bodies bring to their families? All parties sent back the news as quickly as possible, asking their representatives in the capital to immediately ask Duke Changsheng about the performance and the Royal Academy of Arts without any mistakes. Chapter 902. It was expected that all parties would rush to visit first, so Wang Sheng didn't show up himself. He just let Steward Wang be in charge of the reception. The representatives of the feudal lords in the capital didn't dare to do anything. Wang Sheng's title was equal to or even higher than their king. As a representative, it was impossible for Wang Sheng to receive them personally every time, right? Moreover, it was just a reply. As long as Wang Sheng explained it clearly, it would be fine. First, it was about the performance of all the grandmasters again. Steward Wang replied on behalf of Wang Sheng that there would definitely be a performance, but the time was uncertain. After all, everyone present had seen that dozens of great grandmasters had performed for more than 2 days without stopping. When they had finished, they had been carried off the stage. This loss was not small. At least, they had to wait for these grandmasters to recover. In addition, even if they recovered, these grandmasters still had to be responsible for teaching at the Royal Academy of Arts. If all parties were willing to let the people they sent over be wasted and let the grandmasters perform, Duke Changsheng didn't mind earning more gold coins. This reason was reasonable. It made all parties speechless. They were willing to listen to the performance of the grandmasters, but they were more willing to cultivate their own music grandmasters. This was much better than being controlled by others forever, right? Therefore, this was not a problem at all. Everyone only requested to be informed in advance before the next performance. It was best to discuss the matter of booking the theater. The request to book the theater was directly rejected by Steward Wang. He asked them to discuss among themselves whether they could accept others booking the theater while their own performance was behind. Moreover, it was a performance arrangement with an uncertain time. This could almost be said to be the Achilles heel of each party, who was willing to cultivate a lot of masters first while their own party waited slowly. This problem almost didn't need to be discussed. Even if it was discussed, there wouldn't be any conclusion. Wang Sheng and Mei Er had already expected this, so they easily resolved this unrealistic request. Immediately afterward, Wang Sheng asked Steward Wang to remind all the representatives. Even if it was another performance, there was no problem with Wang Sheng's side. However, if all parties sent a large number of masters to the capital, shouldn't they inform the emperor? One had to know that when many experts were breaking through in the royal theater, the guards outside were the royal guards. As long as there were any small disturbances during the advancement process, such as destroying a few arrays or killing a few powerhouses who couldn't control themselves, it would probably cause a series of chain reactions. All the representatives had experienced situations where they could not control their own cultivation, so they knew that Steward Wang was not lying. If they couldn't reach suitable conditions with the royal family, no matter how good the concert's effect was, it would only benefit the royal family, and no one else would benefit. This was another weakness of the feudal vassals. One had to know that the only place where they could perform was the Royal Grand Theater. They really couldn't leave the royal palace. Even if each family built a suitable theater, where would they find so many great master musicians? Since he couldn't avoid it, he would have to negotiate. In any case, the feudal vassals always had the upper hand in negotiations with the royal family. Especially this time, everyone would definitely join forces to put pressure on the royal family, so the royal family would not be able to take advantage of them. The tacit understanding between Tianzi and Wang Sheng could not be expressed in words. The representatives from all sides were very formal in negotiating with Tianzi. Once the request was raised, Tianzi shrugged his shoulders and spread out his hands. The royal family cannot guarantee everyone's safety. The reason was very simple. The royal family didn't have many master guards. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so isolated in a corner of the capital. These master guards couldn't even protect the royal family's own people. So how could they protect all the people of the feudal vassals? On the other hand, Tianzi expressed that there was no problem at all. During the performance, it was completely possible to mobilize the imperial guards to guard the periphery of the Royal Grand Theater. But there weren't many masters in the imperial guards, so whether or not they could protect the royal family was another matter. This time, it was the other party's turn to scratch their heads. On normal days, everyone unanimously suppressed the royal family's power, but at this time, the royal family said that they didn't have enough power and all parties couldn't refute it because this was the truth. There was another point, and that was the Royal Grand Theater was opposite Moisturizing Workshop, and Moisturizing Workshop was only separated from the Imperial City by a moat. Usually, it was fine for female masters to visit Moisturizing Workshop, but if all parties really sent a large number of masters to the capital and gathered so close to the Imperial City, what would the royal family do? Anyway, after the discussion, the major vassal states were faced with two choices. Either they let the royal family increase their power, so that the royal family could accept a large number of masters appearing in the capital without worry, or they restricted the number of people coming to the capital to not exceed a certain number. The major vassal states were actually not satisfied with either of these two plans. Wouldn't increasing the royal family's power be akin to nurturing a tiger and inviting calamity? But if they reduced the number of people coming to the capital, wouldn't the extra quota go to the royal family? In the end, the royal family still increased their power. This was difficult. Not only were the representatives of the major vassal states having a headache, even the royal family was having a headache. In a short period of time, it was likely that both parties wouldn't be able to come to a concrete conclusion. Even so, everyone was in frequent contact, ready to find a mutually satisfactory result. However, among them, the representative of the worry-free city was in a difficult position. As the representative of the worry-free city in the capital, how could he not know what Uncle Li's initial intentions were? He also knew that Wang Sheng also knew Uncle Li's intentions. The trouble that the worry-free city represented was actually the worry-free city Lord's worry. He was now having a headache on how to repair his relationship with Wang Sheng. Uncle Li had already left the capital and was on his way back to the worry-free city. This was a small matter. After all, Uncle Li was back to guard the armory and wouldn't go out easily. The troublesome thing was that because of Uncle Li, a rift had appeared between the worry-free city lord and Wang Sheng. How could this be remedied? To the worry-free city lord, Uncle Li was very important. That was why he stood on Uncle Li's side. However, it was fortunate that the worry-free city lord didn't do anything to Wang Sheng, nor did he send anyone to attack him. In fact, he even got the butler to send Wang Sheng away. This could be considered as barely maintaining their relationship. The problem was that no one was a fool. Wang Sheng had even given up on his residence in the worry-free city. Even Aki had been sent to the grounds of 1,000 devastations by Wang Sheng. This also meant that Wang Sheng was deeply guarded against the worry-free city. At this time, could they still repair their relationship? The few people who could be said to be the closest to Wang Sheng in the worry-free city were currently on their way to the capital. The butler, Ice Li, and the shadow eunuch were all on their way to the capital to see if they could resolve the misunderstanding between Wang Sheng and Uncle Li. Chapter 903. The sudden appearance of a unique method that could help people cultivate shocked everyone, and they finally began to ponder about other things. What they were most concerned about was Wang Sheng's background. Where did Wang Sheng come from? From the information they received from the Song family, they only knew that Wang Sheng seemed to have suddenly descended from the sky. However, no one knew exactly where he had come from, including the Song family. When Wang Sheng had descended, everyone present was Song Yan's confidant. Now, that Song Yan was in control of the Song Kingdom. How could these people not be put in important positions? Who could find out from them what Song Yin did not want others to know? Look at what Wang Sheng had done over the years. Which one of them was not shocking? Everyone was suspicious. What kind of power could cultivate such a monster like Wang Sheng? Countless people were filled with regret. If they had known this would happen, they would not have, or if they had known this would happen, they would have. In short, countless people were filled with regret. Wang Sheng was in the land of warmth and tenderness, and did not care about the thoughts of these people outside. Every day, Rosa would use the heaven and earth reversal method to transfer pure yin qi into Wang Sheng, causing the yin qi in Wang Sheng's body to increase. Gradually, he could feel the existence of yin qi under the pure yang qi of the old Taoist. This was already a very strong trend of balance. On average, every day, Rosa would absorb yang qi from 20 sisters in the Wang residence, and then transfer it to Wang Sheng through the heaven and earth reversal method. This also meant that every time she used the heaven and earth reversal method, she did not need to lower her cultivation level, and there were even signs of her realm increasing. About 5 days after Wang Sheng was forced by Mei to balance yin and yang, Wang Sheng had almost completely comprehended the use of the 4-syllable Sanskrit. He began to study the 5-syllable Sanskrit, and used the 5-syllable formula at the same time. This also caused Wang Sheng's spirit qi to show signs of being in a mess during this period of cultivation. Mei was very worried and had been frowning about it. However, Wang Sheng only acted like this when he was cultivating, which made Mei feel a little relieved. Wang Sheng was very clear about the importance of music in guiding the rhythm of his cultivation. Therefore, from the beginning, he asked Master Yu to carefully guide a junior who was suitable to be a conductor. Everyone thought that only the most skilled musicians could create the effect of spiritual qi oscillation in a sophisticated theater and lead the rhythm of everyone's cultivation. In fact, this statement was only half right. In fact, wasn't even half right. The real key to making the Royal Symphony Orchestra's musicians of varying skill levels activate the spiritual energy oscillation effect in the theater lay in the hands of the master. Without Master Yu's precise arrangement of the position of each instrument, without Master Yu's precise coordination of the reverberation of each instrument, not to mention the musicians of the Royal Symphony Orchestra, even all the great grandmaster musicians would not be able to trigger the effect of spirit energy oscillation. Master Yu's status was many times more important than people thought. So far, there were actually only 4 people who knew this secret: Wang Sheng, old Taoist Ling Su, Mei and Master Yu himself. It seemed that conducting was very simple. All he had to do was stand there and wave his arms and the baton a few times to get the rhythm right. At most, he could hear some flaws in the performance. That was all. In fact, most people did not think much of conducting. This included the various forces who were crazy to know the secrets of musicians, and even some of the musicians who had already participated in the performance. Whether it was the musicians of the Royal Symphony Orchestra or the great grandmasters who arrived later, they did not fully understand all this. They only knew that they only had to follow the music score and Master Yu's gestures to perform the music, and they would be able to achieve an extraordinary effect. They had really underestimated the usefulness of conducting. Wang Sheng and Mei were very clear that there were already people who had begun to contact the members of the Royal Symphony Orchestra. It seemed that some people were also very tempted. Wang Sheng and Mei did not care about this. No matter which force it was, did they really think that they could find out the secret of spirit energy oscillation by poaching a few musicians? These people were really despicable. Wang Sheng was willing to open the Royal Academy of Arts and teach them how to trigger spirit energy oscillation, but there were still people who used such means. He really did not know what their brains were made of. In fact, Wang Sheng really wanted to see these guys go for wool and come home shorn. Unfortunately, the arrival of the Carefree City's elder brother interrupted Wang Sheng's good mood to watch the show. "Brother, it must have been hard on you to come from afar." The other party used a visitation card and very politely requested to see Wang Sheng. Although Wang Sheng could mercilessly reject this kind of official interaction with the Carefree City Lord, he could not refuse his personal friendship with the elder brother of the Carefree City Lord. They could only meet in the Duke's residence's guest hall. When they met, they greeted each other warmly. "Shadow, you actually dare to return to the capital?" The Carefree City Lord did not come alone. Ice Lee and the old Shadow eunuch accompanied him. Ice Lee did not mind, but Wang Sheng was a little surprised to see the Shadow. The old Shadow eunuch was a spy of the royal family in Carefree City. Wang Sheng knew this very well. However, even if he was a spy, at that time, he had acted like he was really going to kill him. The royal family's pursuit of him had not been stopped until now. Did he not want to live anymore by swaggering back to the capital? He did not show his face on the road. Before the old Shadow eunuch could reply, the Carefree City Lord had already spoken on behalf of the old eunuch. His tone was very sincere. This time, the Carefree City Lord also knows that he did not handle things properly. Hence, he specially invited a few of your friends to come here. Please give the Carefree City Lord some face. The Carefree City Lord's attitude was very humble. Wang Sheng was very surprised by the Carefree City Lord's character. In his memory, the Carefree City Lord did not seem so weak even when facing the Emperor. "Brother, don't tell me you don't know that Uncle Lee came to the capital." Wang Sheng looked at the Carefree City Lord with a smile that did not seem like a smile. He said with a sharp tone, "Moreover, you don't know why Uncle Lee came to the capital. Brother, thank you for giving me face. You even call me brother." The butler was very straightforward. He cupped his hands and apologized to Wang Sheng. This time, it was indeed the City Lord's fault. "This is the fault of our worry-free city. Brother, tell us the rules. As long as it is within our worry-free city's capabilities, we will not refuse." "Someone wants to kill me, brother." "Brother." Wang Sheng smiled and reminded the Carefree City Lord, "If I tell you the rules, you really won't refuse?" Beads of sweat instantly appeared on the Carefree City Lord's head. It was very obvious on his chubby face. Actually, everyone had already guessed Wang Sheng's intention. If Uncle Lee wanted to kill Wang Sheng, what could Wang Sheng do? He could only retaliate and kill Uncle Lee. Now that the Carefree City Lord had delivered himself to the Carefree City Lord, if Wang Sheng really wanted Uncle Lee to die, the Carefree City Lord would definitely not agree to it. The Carefree City Lord would definitely not agree to it. Chapter 904. Brother, can you make an exception? The butler was already wiping his sweat. He knew that this trip would not go smoothly, but he did not expect that Wang Sheng's first sentence would go straight to the heart of the matter. How was he supposed to respond? Sure. Wang Sheng's reply was very certain, causing the butler, Shadow, and Ice Lee to be in disbelief. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Immediately, the butler was overjoyed and hurriedly asked, "Brother, speak. I'm all ears. I don't think it's realistic to ask you to do it yourself." Wang Sheng smiled and said, "How about this? I won't make things difficult for the City Lord. I'll find someone to do it myself. Whether it's successful or not, you can promise not to pursue the matter. How about it?" The butler's face immediately fell. This condition was basically asking for Uncle Lee's life. If it was someone else who said this, the butler would definitely nod without hesitation. "No problem. As long as you can kill Uncle Lee, there won't be any problems." Who didn't know that Uncle Lee was an expert? A large number of red card assassins in the worry-free city were like babies in front of Uncle Lee. Anyone who dared to plot against Uncle Lee must be tired of living. But Wang Sheng was different. Wang Sheng had killed countless people with higher cultivation than Wang Sheng. It could be said that more than 90% of the people Wang Sheng killed had higher cultivation than Wang Sheng. If Wang Sheng really made a move against Uncle Lee might not be able to survive. Furthermore, the butler had already received news from the worry-free city. Uncle Lee had been asked out in the capital, and when he returned, his face was bruised and swollen. He had probably been taught a lesson. Although he did not know which expert did it, he immediately ordered his men not to follow Wang Sheng. From the signs, it should be the result of an expert by Wang Sheng's side. Since the other party could cause Uncle Lee to be bruised and swollen and take the initiative to give up on the operation against Wang Sheng, it meant that they could definitely kill Uncle Lee. They knew that Uncle Lee had the backing of the worry-free city, so they didn't want to make a big deal out of it. The butler absolutely believed that as long as he nodded, Uncle Lee would definitely die. This was not a wild guess, but a judgment made with a clear understanding of Wang Sheng. Even though worry-free city had already gone silent, which meant that they had tacitly approved of Uncle Lee's actions, Wang Sheng still immediately came up with a concert that attracted everyone's attention. Uncle Lee, an expert, was far from being able to compare to someone who could stir up the situation of the world the moment he made his move. Unfortunately, worry-free city could not give up on Uncle Lee. Of course, at the same time, they also wanted to maintain a good relationship with Wang Sheng. This caused them to be stuck in the middle. Brother, the city lord is also in a difficult position. The butler pretended to be pitiful to Wang Sheng. You know Uncle Lee's cultivation and status. The city lord really can't restrain him. Also, think about it. If the city lord really stood on Uncle Lee's side, would you still be able to leave Carefree City? You should also understand the city lord's difficulties. In that case, brother, tell me. Wang Sheng directly handed the opportunity to raise conditions to the butler. What do you think I should do? Hearing Wang Sheng say this, the butler could not bring himself to say anything. No matter what, Uncle Lee had nearly killed Wang Sheng. If he asked Wang Sheng to swallow this humiliation, he probably would not be able to open his mouth. Unfortunately, even if he could not open his mouth, he had to. So, the butler could only thicken his skin and say, "Brother, why don't we not use Uncle Lee? If it were someone else, Carefree City would help you kill 10 people for free. How about that?" "Sure, why not?" Wang Sheng appeared to be very easy to talk to, immediately agreeing. Really? The butler could not believe his ears. Even Ice Lee and Shadow were the same. How could they be so easy to talk to? 10 people? In that case, let's start with the heads of the 10 strongest vassal states' rulers, starting from the Song Nation. Wang Sheng said casually as if this matter had nothing to do with him. The butler's face immediately darkened. 10 vassal states' rulers' heads? How could that be possible? No, Wang Sheng did not have to wait for the butler to answer to know the answer. Hence, he casually said, "Let's change it to the original Grand Elder of the 10 Nations then." "Brother, can you stop joking?" The butler could only smile bitterly. What was the difference between 10 Grand Elders and 10 Kings? Weren't they the same? "Brother, how much gold coins do you think I can save by killing the 10 people with the highest bounty for free?" Wang Sheng did not refute the butler's words and simply asked. This was another question that the butler could not answer. It was not because there was no specific figure, but because there was a figure it was difficult to answer. The 10 targets with the highest bounty in Carefree City were only worth 500 to 600 million gold coins. The problem was, would Wang Sheng care about 500 to 600 million gold coins? Putting aside the fact that the ones with the highest bounty were the heads of the major families, the number of gold coins alone would be an insult to Wang Sheng. Putting aside the fact that an all-Grandmaster level band would cost 100,000 gold coins per ticket and 1,000 seats would be 100 million gold coins. He could casually arrange a few performances and earn hundreds of millions of gold coins. Besides, it would be highly sought after and he would not need to risk his life at all. Using the excuse of killing 10 people for free to fool Wang Sheng was not sincere at all. To be honest, brother, you were there that day too. Seeing that the butler was in a dilemma, Wang Sheng changed his tone and asked, "Was I the one who didn't follow the rules that day?" No. Of course, the butler knew that Wang Sheng was not the one who didn't follow the rules at that time, so he answered firmly. In that case, someone else was the one who didn't follow the rules, right? Wang Sheng asked again. What else could the butler say? He could only nod. What if someone in Carefree City dares to kill people in the inner city and doesn't follow the rules? Wang Sheng asked again, if the person who doesn't follow the rules can still be the old master, what will the Carefree City do if the news spreads? What else could they do? The Carefree City broke the rules themselves. Other than the destruction of the entire city, what else could they do? Other than the upper echelons of the major clans, countless people in the world hoped that the Carefree City would be destroyed. as long as Wang Sheng released the news. Unless the other powers were willing to expose their tacit agreement with the Carefree City, they could only watch as the Carefree City was swallowed up by the experts of the various powers. The butler couldn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with pleading. Of course, there was also a slight threat. The reason why the Carefree City didn't fall out with Wang Sheng on the surface was because Wang Sheng didn't release the news. Otherwise, the Carefree City could only disregard everything and kill Wang Sheng. You don't want to deal with the person who broke the rules, but you want me to relent? How can there be such a good deal in the world? Wang Sheng laughed. Brother, and the two of you, do you think I'm such an easy person to talk to? The three of them shook their heads. Forget it. Since you're all here, I'll give you some face. Wang Sheng relaxed his tone. Give me half of the Carefree City's armory, and I can pretend that nothing happened. Chapter 905. Could he give half of the armory to Wang Sheng? Of course not. The butler's bitter smile was even more bitter than before. This was only because of the few of them. If he didn't give them face, would he have to move the entire armory over? Why did Wang Sheng have a conflict with Uncle Li? The root cause was that Wang Sheng had wanted to go to the armory to search for a powerful martial technique. The city lord had given him 2 copies out of respect, causing Uncle Li to think that Wang Sheng's rank had been obtained through trickery. Thus, the two sides had a disagreement. Hence, from the start, the butler knew that Wang Sheng would definitely have his eyes on the armory. The city lord knew this as well. It could even be said that Wang Sheng's target was the armory from the start. However, the armory was extremely important to the Carefree City. Even though the city lord knew Wang Sheng's target, he still wanted the butler to use other methods to satisfy Wang Sheng instead of using the martial techniques in the armory. Now that Wang Sheng directly mentioned the armory, the butler naturally couldn't avoid it. He could only smile bitterly. Brother, you should know that half of the armory is impossible. Even if the butler didn't want to speak, he could only bargain with Wang Sheng. Then how much do you want? Wang Sheng asked bluntly. 40%. 40% is also impossible. The butler still shook his head. This time, Wang Sheng didn't say anything. He waited for the butler to say the bottom line of the Carefree City. 4. The butler looked at Wang Sheng's expression and felt a headache coming on. However, he had no choice but to brace himself and say the city lord's words. How much? Wang Sheng looked at the butler with an expression that said, You're insulting me, and asked loudly. 4. The butler's voice became even softer, and he lowered his head. He did not dare to meet Wang Sheng's eyes at all. He only raised 4 fingers to indicate his number. Bro, how much gold coins did you spend on this trip? I'll add on 10 times that amount. Butler Wang will bring it to you, so that you didn't come here for nothing, Wang Sheng said with a chuckle. With a gentle tone, he said, Don't leave at noon. I'll treat you all to drinks. Recently, the Imperial Treasury has a new batch of good wine. Have a taste. Wang Sheng didn't mention anything about the secret manuals in the arsenal and directly invited them to drink. His meaning was very clear. There was no need to discuss this matter anymore. Everyone should just do what they were supposed to do. Of course, whether it was the Royal Symphony Orchestra or the Grandmaster Orchestra, the people of Carefree City did not plan to participate in them in the future. Perhaps there were a few who could rely on other connections to get tickets, but it was unlikely that they would be able to get tickets through normal channels from Wang Sheng. This was the only way that Wang Sheng could restrain Carefree City, and at the same time, it was also a way to put pressure on all parties. In any case, whoever didn't cooperate, his enemies would grow stronger. Wang Sheng didn't even need to do it himself. Their enemies and rivals would be happy to step on them. It was easy for Wang Sheng to say this, but the butler was anxious. If he couldn't reach an agreement with Wang Sheng, then Carefree City would be passive in the future. How could this be allowed? But at the end of the day, the current situation of both sides was like this because of Uncle Li. The focus of the conflict was that the one who made the mistake didn't get any punishment, but the consequences had to be borne by Wang Sheng, who didn't do anything wrong. It was unfair, no matter where it was. This was also the reason why the dignified Carefree City Lord was willing to lower his head in front of Wang Sheng. Brother, You've made a lot of mistakes. For the sake of me and the two of them, please raise your hand a little." How could the butler let Wang Sheng stay silent? He hurriedly continued, "You also don't want to fall out with Carefree City, right? If you really fall out with them, Uncle Lee will be the happiest one." "Brother, you don't dare to touch Uncle Lee. Are you not willing to let me help you deal with him?" Wang Sheng looked at the butler and asked in confusion, "Just because he can help you guard the armory? To be honest, I don't dare to say that I have 10,000 ways to safeguard secret manuals, but I can definitely give you 1,000. Is there a need for that?" "It's not that simple." The butler could only continue to reveal a little. "It's the same as how outsiders can't pursue someone who has committed a great crime as long as he escapes to Carefree City. These are all things that have been agreed upon a long time ago. As long as Uncle Lee is in Carefree City, he can't be touched. If you had said this earlier, I would have killed him in the capital." Wang Sheng's eyes widened. If he had known this would happen, he would have directly become Uncle Lee with old Taoist Ling Su in the capital. How regretful. He had let go of such a huge threat. Then he better not leave Carefree City in the future. It's best if he doesn't appear on the surface of Carefree City. Wang Sheng directly threw out a suggestion. He better scram back underground and be a rat. As long as he dares to come to the surface, don't blame me for not holding back. "Brother, you must be joking." The butler secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. He smiled and said, "If he only stays in the inner city, who can touch him?" "Brother, don't do it in the inner city, lest you get into trouble." "Brother." Wang Sheng laughed. "Do you want me to prove it? I can send the Carefree City's City Lord's residence to heaven from 20 li away. You can't possibly say that I did it in the inner city of Carefree City, right?" Sending the City Lord's residence to heaven from 20 li away from the city? The butler immediately shivered. If anyone else dared to say this, the butler would definitely take it as a joke. However, if Wang Sheng said it, then it wouldn't be a good joke. Wang Sheng had killed the Dai clan's great elder several li away. Then, destroying the Carefree City Lord's residence from tens of li away wasn't something impossible, right? This was troublesome. That was the first thought that popped into the butler's mind. Uncle Lee could only hide underground and be a rat. Otherwise, as long as Wang Sheng continued to act outside Carefree City, the inner city would no longer be safe. Even the city lord wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Looking at Wang Sheng's serious expression, the butler's heart couldn't help but twitch. What was this? Because of Uncle Lee, the city lord wouldn't be able to sleep at night. This was really troublesome. The only good news was that Wang Sheng had relented and no longer insisted on killing Uncle Lee. However, the price was that Uncle Lee couldn't appear above ground and couldn't leave Carefree City. Although Uncle Lee would definitely be guarding the armory underground, being forced to stay underground and being willing to stay underground were two different things. He just didn't know if Uncle Lee would be able to accept this. Of course, this was the city lord's problem. The butler's matter hadn't been settled yet, and he hadn't received Wang Sheng's full forgiveness. No matter what, he had to make Wang Sheng treat Carefree City equally in terms of musician training and concert tickets. "Brother, what other requests do you have? Tell me all of them." The butler took advantage of the fact that Wang Sheng had relented and asked Wang Sheng, "The 4 cultivation techniques are the foundation. What do you need Carefree City for? Tell me all of them." Chapter 906. I don't lack gold coins, beauties, or experts. Wang Sheng smiled. What else does Carefree City have? Even some of the businesses of the mayor were my ideas. The butler knew that the spice business, as well as the wine business with the imperial treasury, were all Wang Sheng's ideas. This was the truth. To be honest, other than assassins, there was nothing else in Carefree City that could satisfy Wang Sheng's appetite. Then let's kill them. Without waiting for the butler to reply, Wang Sheng made a decision. Recently, many people in the capital feel that musicians are not bad, so they're inexplicably trying to get in touch with the musicians of the Royal Symphony Orchestra. Originally, I didn't want to bother with them, but there are always some annoying people hanging around you. Carefree City, help me kill these people. No problem. Upon hearing that it was just killing a group of people who were trying to get the musicians of the Royal Symphony Orchestra, the butler patted his chest and guaranteed. Leave it to us. The butler didn't need to ask who they were, and Wang Sheng didn't say who they were either. The identities of these people naturally needed to be investigated by the killers of Carefree City before they could take action. However, this was not a problem at all. These were all the strengths of Carefree City, and they would not fail. Don't use my name to kill them. Take responsibility yourself. Wang Sheng didn't stand on ceremony at all and directly mentioned a restrictive condition. In the future, if the forces behind those people come looking for you, take responsibility yourself. Sure, the Gan family nodded without hesitation. Since they had already killed them, why would they care about their reputation? This time, before the butler went out, he had obtained the full authorization of the mayor. As long as the conditions were not too excessive, he could basically agree to them. That's it then. Wang Sheng didn't mention anything about financial compensation. It was completely meaningless. Remember, Uncle Lee, don't go up to the surface. Also, leave the martial arts manuals in the armory. Let's go have a drink. How could Wang Sheng not want the martial arts manuals in the fore armory? In addition to the 2 that he had obtained from the armory, Wang Sheng had 6 in his hands. The cultivation art that the worry-free city used to make amends was definitely not something that could be taken lightly. It was something that was worth treasuring. The housekeeper pointed at Wang Sheng. In the end, he did not say anything. He directly took out a storage ring and gave it to Wang Sheng. Then he, Ice Lee, and the shadow followed Wang Sheng to Wang Sheng's practice room for a drink. From the beginning to the end, Ice Lee and the shadow didn't actually say anything. They just appeared here. For Wang Sheng to be able to get this result, it could be said that he had given him a lot of face. Hence, the 4 of them drank to their heart's content. By the way, brother, your friend in Carefree City, Aki seems to be being hunted down in the grounds of Thousand Despair for some unknown reason. Halfway through the meal, the butler seemed to have thought of something and reminded Wang Sheng. Someone from Carefree City came across it and extended a helping hand. Everything is fine now. At the start, the butler did not even mention the fact that the people from Worry-Free City had helped Aki. Only by mentioning it now would he be more sincere. Thank you for telling me, brother. Wang Sheng thanked the butler and then said, when will the brother who extended a helping hand come to the capital? I will give him a ticket to the Grandmaster Orchestra. Then I will thank you on his behalf. The butler accepted Wang Sheng's kindness without hesitation. Everyone knew that this ticket now meant a chance to break through. As long as one's cultivation reached a bottleneck, one could guarantee a breakthrough. This kind of opportunity was not something that could be measured with gold. It doesn't matter to the 2 of you. Shadow, you will probably have to leave the capital soon. After exchanging pleasantries with the butler, Wang Sheng turned to the old shadow eunuch. It is too dangerous here. I will ask Mayer to send you away. With her around, no one in the capital will dare to investigate you. The old shadow eunuch nodded and agreed to Wang Sheng's good intentions. Regarding this, the butler and Ice Lee had no objections. The purpose of the shadow's visit to the capital was to persuade Wang Sheng. Now that Wang Sheng had agreed, there was no need for the shadow to stay in the capital in fear. They ate and drank until the afternoon. After they were full, Wang Sheng sent the butler and Ice Lee out of the Duke's mansion. As for the old shadow eunuch, before the butler and Ice Lee left, he boarded the carriage that Mayer had prepared and left the Duke's mansion. No one would think that there was anything wrong with this. The shadow was a eunuch. Of course, he would not have any designs on Mayer. He had a good relationship with Wang Sheng, so he would not have any enmity towards Mayer. With Mayer's current status in the capital, it could be said that she directly represented Wang Sheng. No one dared to stop her. However, if Wang Sheng wanted to personally send her off, it would be too big of a target. It would be inappropriate. Mayer was the most suitable person to do this. After boarding the carriage and leaving the Duke's mansion, the old shadow eunuch activated a sound-blocking technique. Then, his expression immediately changed. He became extremely excited. This servant kowtows to your royal highness. In the carriage, the shadow directly bowed to Mayer. His face was full of tears, and he was very sincere. Wang Sheng had asked the shadow how to identify the real princess last time. Now, he had arranged for Mayer to send the shadow out. Was there any need to explain the meaning behind this? Sir, please don't do this. Mayer hurriedly helped the shadow up. Speaking of which, Mayer still has to thank Sir for saving my life back then. If the shadow hadn't brought Mayer out of the palace that year, Mayer might have been killed by the Empress's people. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had saved her life. Wang Sheng also told Mayer about what happened that year. Naturally, Mayer was also very grateful to the shadow. That was because your Royal Highness is blessed by the heavens. This servant was just following the will of the heavens. The shadow didn't dare to take credit and replied sincerely, "Don't call me your Royal Highness. I still haven't decided whether or not to recognize him." Mayer mainly wanted to express her gratitude to the shadow for saving her life. There was nothing else. Regarding the current situation, Mayer didn't hide it and told the shadow. His Majesty was also forced to do so. I hope that your Royal Highness can understand the difficulties that His Majesty went through. The shadow knew that he couldn't participate in this kind of matter. However, the shadow was absolutely loyal to the emperor. So, he still said a few good words for the emperor. "I'll think about it for a while more." Mayer nodded. She was still very kind to the shadow. You, on the other hand, have to be careful in the worry-free city in the future. This servant thanks your Royal Highness for your concern. The shadow was once again moved to tears. To be able to receive such advice from the princess, the shadow felt that the hard work of the past few years was worth it. In the future, if you have nothing to do, just stay in the worry-free city. No matter how big the matter is, try not to leave the city, Mayer warned seriously. Especially the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair. If you can avoid it, don't go there. This is the Duke's wish. It's good that you know what to do. Don't force yourself. This servant will definitely obey. The shadow naturally understood that this was for his own good and hurriedly agreed. Seeing the baby princess again after more than 10 years, the shadow's heart was about to explode with joy. Chapter 907. Shadow was not a citizen of Carefree City. He had never been one. He was merely a spy in Carefree City. In the past, he already had sufficient status. Now, with his relationship with Wang Sheng, he could come into contact with the core of Carefree City. The crucial point was that Shadow had approached Wang Sheng on the surface. It had been arranged by the mayor of Carefree City. Thus, he had not been exposed yet. With this relationship and the special relationship between Mayor and Shadow, Wang Sheng could ask Shadow to keep an eye on him when he was passing the news to the royal family. That was why Mayor had sent Shadow away. Shadow was indeed loyal to the royal family. However, he knew that he had been away from the capital and the emperor for more than 10 years. His relationship with Mayor was slightly closer than his relationship with the emperor. In any case, Mayor was a real princess. What was the difference between loyalty to the princess and loyalty to the emperor? It was just sending some news. There was no problem at all. Unknowingly, Wang Sheng had planted a spy in Carefree City in front of the butler. However, the butler did not know about it. The butler had many things to do now. Of course, the most important thing was to quickly inform the mayor of the negotiations and Wang Sheng's conditions. After sending the letter, the butler began to arrange for people to investigate those who had been in contact with the musicians of the Royal Symphony Orchestra. Before the attackers arrived, the butler had to confirm all the targets. In addition, this was a large-scale attack in the capital. No matter how much Carefree City despised the royal family, they had to inform the royal court. Fortunately, as long as the royal court was not stupid enough to send people to seduce those musicians, it would only benefit the royal court if they attacked Carefree City. As long as they informed the royal court, they would not have to worry about the emperor disagreeing. When the news reached Carefree City, when the young mayor saw the conditions, his first reaction was not anger. Instead, he smiled. He seemed to enjoy this feeling very much. After enjoying it for a while, he asked someone to invite Uncle Lee over. "What is it?" Uncle Lee looked very impatient. It was unknown what he was doing had been interrupted. When he rushed over, his expression was very ugly and his tone was not pleasant. In fact, this wasn't the only time he treated the city lord this way. Ever since he returned from the capital, Uncle Lee's expression hadn't been good. The city lord had already heard everything that happened to Uncle Lee in the capital from the two red card assassins that had accompanied him. Of course, he knew the reason for Uncle Lee's bad complexion. No matter who it was, if they were beaten black and blue and unable to retaliate, they would not have a good expression. This was sent by the housekeeper from the capital today. Uncle Lee, take a look. With his back facing Uncle Lee, the young castellan casually threw the letter sent by the butler onto the table next to Uncle Lee's seat. Uncle Lee glared at the city lord's back, then picked up the letter. After reading a few lines, he was already furious. Pong! A heavy slap landed on the table along with the letter. The entire table turned into powder, but the soft letter seemed to be very hard and was not damaged in the slightest. I'll go and kill him right now. Never having suffered such humiliation before, Uncle Lee flew into a rage. He almost jumped up and bellowed. I fully support you. The city lord didn't even turn his head, but from his tone, one could hear the smile. That guy is currently in the capital, and I heard that his cultivation has been slightly damaged. Other than the people in Worry-Free City, what kind of help do you need? Intelligence, news, gold coins, formations, anything is fine. Logically speaking, Uncle Lee should be happy that the city lord had expressed his stance, but when he thought of the terrifying old Taoist Ling Su in the capital and the condition that he was forced to promise not to make a move on Wang Sheng for 3 years, he hesitated. It was true that he was furious, but could he return to the capital right now and kill Wang Sheng? He couldn't. Therefore, the city lord's support was completely meaningless. Therefore, no matter how angry he was, Uncle Lee could only express it verbally, then sit on the chair dejectedly, not moving an inch. Go! The city lord walked a few steps forward and sat on his seat. Perhaps it was due to the ingenuity of the design, or perhaps it was due to the sun's coincidental position, but a shadow covered the city lord's neck. From Uncle Lee's angle, he couldn't see the city lord's face at all. I still have to guard the armory. Uncle Lee's face darkened, and he gritted his teeth. The formations in the armory need to be redesigned. Uncle Lee, so you still remember that you have to guard the armory. The city lord's mocking words were heard. How rare. Uncle Lee, why did you bring a group of experts to the capital a few days ago without even informing us? Were you really planning to enjoy the concert? I'm going to kill Lone Wolf. Uncle Lee was provoked by the city lord's tone, and his anger flared up again. Why? Can't I? Of course you can. The city lord immediately retorted. In the promise you made with Worry-Free City, you can leave for a period of time at any time. But since you went, why didn't you make a move? I couldn't find an opportunity. Uncle Lee's aura slowly weakened. Facing this young city lord, although he could kill him 100 times at any time, he still didn't dare to do so. In fact, he didn't even dare to get angry at the city lord now. I couldn't find an opportunity. The city lord laughed loudly and asked Uncle Lee, Lone Wolf said that he spared your life at least twice in the capital. Do you know why he spared your life? Spared his life twice? Uncle Lee instantly understood which 2 times it was. The first time was when old Taoist Ling Su faced him directly. The second time should be at the concert venue. At that time, if old Taoist Ling Su did not help him, he could only be tortured to death by 1,000 experts. Because of Worry-Free City, Uncle Lee completely lost his temper. Although he had a fiery temper, it depended on who he was dealing with. He could deal with ordinary experts, ordinary people, and even Wang Sheng. However, he didn't have the confidence to deal with the city lord. Just as the city lord had said, if it wasn't for Worry-Free City supporting him, he would have died many times over. You also know that it's because of Worry-Free City. The city lord's mocking words rang out again. I really don't understand, Uncle Lee. How did Worry-Free City dissatisfy you? Why did you have to cause so much trouble for Worry-Free City? Do you know what kind of price I had to pay to help you resolve this matter? I sent my personal butler, the butler who had served me since I was young, to plead with Lone Wolf in the capital. If necessary, he even knelt down and let Lone Wolf step on my face. Before Uncle Lee could reply, the city lord was already furious. Just because you didn't follow the rules when you were guarding the armory, is it so hard for you to hand over things to someone who was brought there by my butler? Will you die? Chapter 908. Whoosh. A teacup was thrown towards Uncle Lee along with the sound of the wind. Uncle Lee raised his hand and caught the teacup. He shook it a few times and collected all the tea into the teacup. Then, he gently placed the teacup in front of him. He knew that the city lord was really angry this time. The first time Uncle Lee made things difficult for Wang Sheng in the armory, the city lord endured it and did not say anything. But this time, he took the initiative to bring people to kill Wang Sheng, only to return in failure. This truly angered the city lord. He ordered his butler to apologize to Wang Sheng and even knelt down. Uncle Lee knew that this was not a lie. He could tell from the difficult conditions that Wang Sheng had set at the beginning that his butler had almost failed to complete the mission. Fortunately, Ice Lee and the old eunuch had gone, and Wang Sheng had reluctantly given him some face. The problem was that he had to stay underground like a mouse in the worry-free city and not come to the surface. As long as he returned to the surface, the other party would most likely kill him. Uncle Lee was not afraid of death, but he did not want to die at his age. At the very least, he did not want to die in such a useless manner. There was still the 3-year promise, and he could not act against Wang Sheng. It seemed that Uncle Lee could only follow Wang Sheng's request and hide in the armory. This damned oath and that damned thing that had been passed down from generation to generation by the worry-free city lord had bound him to death. Even though Uncle Lee could do as he pleased in Carefree City, he could only lower his head in front of the city lord. This was especially so when he was clearly in the wrong. It was obvious that the city lord was beating him up and expressing his dissatisfaction. Uncle Lee understood this, but he had nothing to say. In the silence, Uncle Lee had already started to think about the vague feeling that he had when he listened to the concert. It was an indescribable feeling that allowed his cultivation to break through the limits. It was a pity that he only had that one chance. He could not stay in the capital any longer. As soon as the butler arrived in the capital and started to negotiate with Wang Sheng, Uncle Lee would probably have to face old Taoist Ling Su's relentless pursuit. As such, the cunning Uncle Lee rushed back to Carefree City before the butler reached the capital and before Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su could react. Although he said he rushed back, he was actually escaping. He just left early so that he did not look so pathetic. This was also Wang Sheng's mistake. Of course, it was also related to Wang Sheng's fear of Carefree City. For the sake of obtaining the secrets of the grounds of Thousand Despair's core, Wang Sheng had not made up his mind to fall out with Carefree City. Seeing the cunning Uncle Lee in such a state, the city lord knew that he would not care about what he said anymore. Since the purpose of beating him up had been achieved, Uncle Lee would at least become more obedient in the near future. Thus, the city lord did not go too far and did not continue to force him. Instead, he politely invited Uncle Lee to return to the armory. Remember, do not let anyone see you come out. The city lord did not seem to force Uncle Lee to come out, but in reality, he still had restrictions. Otherwise, if news of this reaches Lone Wolf's ears, I will not be able to keep my mansion. When that happens, I will make you pay for this. Uncle Lee stood up silently and was about to leave. If you need anything, just let me know. They will prepare it for you. The city lord's voice softened. However, if you dare to make things difficult for anyone who enters the armory in the future, I will destroy the armory and you will not be able to come out. The city lord's tone was gentle, but his words were murderous. Uncle Lee, who was about to leave, paused. An indescribable smile blossomed on his face as he strode out. I knew it, I knew it. While the city lord was beating down on Uncle Lee, Wang Sheng was also regretting his decision. How could a cunning old fox like Uncle Lee be an obedient subordinate of the city lord? If he had known this would happen, he would have killed Uncle Lee. Carefree City might not have fallen out with him because of Uncle Lee. This was not a reminder from the butler. Wang Sheng had guessed it from the series of actions in Carefree City. In any case, the relationship between Uncle Lee and the city lord might not be that strong. The city lord must have something on Uncle Lee, which was why he was willing to stay in the armory and use the secret manuals there to cultivate. Perhaps it was a mutual benefit. However, if he really killed Uncle Lee, the consequences might not be that serious. Wang Sheng was only subdued by the importance of the armory. So he took it for granted that Uncle Lee, who guarded the armory, was also extremely important. However, he did not think more about it. If Uncle Lee was really loyal to Carefree City, it was impossible for him not to reveal the fact that he had surpassed the peak of the legendary realm to the city lord. For example, the Grand Master of the Laojun Temple knew very well that old Taoist Ling Su was an expert who had surpassed the peak of the 9th stage. It was just that the Laojun Temple did not have a genius as powerful as old ancestor Ling Su, so he could not inherit the old man's legacy. As for Carefree City, the city lord probably did not even know about it. If he missed this opportunity, he was afraid that he would have to wait for at least 3 years to find a more suitable opportunity in the future. If Uncle Lee was tolerant enough and did not come out after 3 years, Wang Sheng would not be able to do anything about it. Moreover, the person who made the move was old Taoist Ling Su. Wang Sheng was afraid that he would not be able to do it. Therefore, Wang Sheng still had to rapidly improve his cultivation in the past few years. At the very least, he had to improve himself to the 9th stage of the legendary realm. Otherwise, he might not even be able to open the core of the Land of Thousand Despair. This was purely based on Wang Sheng's intuition. After entering the core of the Land of Thousand Despair several times, Wang Sheng was well aware of the dangers inside. If the girl in his dream was really sealed, then without the strength of the legendary realm, he was afraid that he would not even be able to touch the seal, let alone open it. The 4 secret manuals sent by Carefree City, Wang Sheng did not even look at them and directly kept them. What Wang Sheng needed now was to quickly restore his cultivation and then continue to improve instead of immediately studying these offensive secret techniques. He had already cultivated the multi-word formula to the 5-word formula, so his recovery was faster and faster. And Rosa had been delivering yin qi to him every day, which also benefited Wang Sheng a lot. The sisters in the Wang residence had already begun to practice the improved Yongchun mantra in batches. With the support of Wang Sheng's huge financial resources, their realms had soared. Of course, Wang Sheng did not forget about the assistance of music. In addition to being busy with the affairs of the Royal Academy of Arts, Wang Sheng also discovered an interesting phenomenon. That was, when there was only one musician, a great guru-level musician in the small theater could still cause a small area of spiritual qi oscillation. Chapter 909. Wang Sheng had discovered this situation when a master asked Wang Sheng to use his extraordinary ears to listen to his solo and give him some comments. The other party was a great master, so Wang Sheng could not be rude. Therefore, he was not like a normal member of a symphony orchestra who would listen to a random place. Instead, he was very seriously arranged to sit in the small theater, where he sat in the audience while the great master musicians played on the stage. One was playing seriously, while the other was listening seriously. As a result, in the process of playing, the small theater once again triggered a spirit qi oscillation. The scale was not large, and it could not be compared to when dozens of great master musicians played at the same time with Master Yu as the conductor. However, this level of spirit qi oscillation was enough to draw Wang Sheng into cultivation and drive the rhythm of Wang Sheng's cultivation. The current situation was that as long as these great masters had a higher level of cultivation than Wang Sheng, they could successfully use their unique spirit qi and music rhythm to drive the rhythm of Wang Sheng's cultivation. From another perspective, it was actually equivalent to a person with a higher level of cultivation guiding a person with a lower level of cultivation. It was just that the musicians used this situation to express it. After discovering this, Wang Sheng basically invited a great master to perform his best piece every day, and while he listened and enjoyed the music, he would follow and cultivate for a while. This level of spirit qi oscillation was not enough to form a mass of spirit qi to drive Wang Sheng's cultivation to a large extent, but it was very good at driving the rhythm of Wang Sheng's 5-word formula practice. At least when practicing the 5-word formula while listening to music, Wang Sheng had very few examples of failure. Using the 5-word formula at the same time brought Wang Sheng's body recovery speed almost comparable to the spirit qi oscillation caused by the Royal Symphony Orchestra's performance. As long as he could maintain the rhythm without failure, Wang Sheng's recovery speed was completely comparable to his initial recovery speed. It would not be a big problem for him to recover from the 6th stage to the 7th stage in a few days, at most 10 days. This was under the premise that Wang Sheng did not use any kinds of supplements in the later stages. Of course, Sister Rosa's daily Inqi infusion was also a very important reason. Now, Sister Rosa was nourished by Wang Sheng every day. Whether it was her appearance or temperament, she showed a kind of radiance like a flower that was diligently watered, which made Mayer extremely jealous. Fortunately, Sister Rosa was quite good at conducting herself. Every day, besides serving Wang Sheng and dealing with the sisters in the Wang residence, she would follow Mayer like a servant, fawning all the time, making Mayer beam with joy. So, although Rosa had been dominating Wang Sheng, Mayer at most envied Rosa's appearance, but there was no other jealousy or hatred in other aspects. The two of them were like sisters. Of course, Wang Sheng was leisurely enjoying what in the eyes of others was simply like being punished by God, but there were many people outside who would gnash their teeth in hatred at the mention of this. One must know that the current models in Dream Workshop, coaches, and even shop assistants, each of them had a status in the capital like the Victoria's Secret supermodels on Earth. Any one of them was a superstar beauty who could attract countless people's crazy pursuit. But now, all these beauties had been monopolized by Wang Sheng alone. He wasn't even sharing a single one with anyone else. How could this kind of monopolizing behavior not be hated by the men in the capital? It was not that there were no important clients who tried to rope in one or two beauties for some important people, but when they just raised the idea to their coach or a certain model, they were unanimously rejected. If it was just a rejection, it didn't matter. At worst, they could just change the target. But the reason for their rejection was very consistent. There was only one reason. That was their sweetheart and their master, Duke Changsheng, would not want to see this scene. Those who were familiar with what Wang Sheng had done before couldn't describe their feelings. It was clear that Wang Sheng had all of them, but they themselves believed that Wang Sheng was their master from the bottom of their hearts. They all knew that these beauties were gifts from the 3 kingdoms of Tang, Xia, and Feng to Wang Sheng, but who knew what method Wang Sheng used to make so many beauties fall in love with him? It was unknown how many playboys in the capital and the world admired his ability to pick up girls. Of course, no one noticed that a group of women in the Wang mansion had become different from before. Their temperament was more restrained, but it was more attractive. If a master saw it, he would definitely see that there was a change in their cultivation. Unfortunately, most of the clients in Dream Workshop were noble ladies, but there were not many masters. No one cared about this at all. Even if they did notice, they would only passionately ask if there was any beauty maintenance method. Just as Wang Sheng was enjoying and cultivating in peace, the Royal Academy of Arts, which everyone had been waiting for, finally opened. Anyone who had a certain foundation in music and architecture could enter the Royal Academy of Arts after passing the Academy's examination. The Royal Academy of Arts had 2 levels of courses for the music major. The first level was relatively basic, taught by the musicians of the Royal Symphony Orchestra. The content taught was proficiency in various musical instruments and knowledge of staff. The second level was advanced courses, mainly teaching the application of spiritual energy in performing. They were all taught by grandmasters. Everyone had been waiting for the Royal Academy of Arts to enroll students. Once the news was released, at least 2,000 to 3,000 people signed up in just 3 days. The person in charge of issuing the examination order number directly arranged the examination from that day until 10 days later. However, no one expected that on the night before the examination, at least 150 people in the capital lost their lives due to various reasons. What was more frightening was that these people died almost silently, as if they did not alarm the surrounding people at all. Their deaths were only discovered the next morning. Such a large number of deaths would be a huge case no matter when. However, the officials in charge of investigating the case in the capital only sent people to collect the corpses. They did not have the slightest intention of investigating the case with great fanfare. What was even more puzzling was that the victims' corpses were quickly taken back by their relatives and friends for burial. However, these relatives and friends did not have the slightest intention of forcing the court to immediately find the murderer. They all kept a low profile and only quietly completed the matter. The representatives from all sides received a warning from Carefree City the next day. Under the circumstances where everyone had the opportunity to learn, whoever dared to have any evil thoughts would end up like those who died. Chapter 9:10. Every force actually had their own people who wanted to use some underhanded methods in order to gain extra rewards. This was something that the representatives of the various forces were well aware of. However, this was not a bad thing for them. If they succeeded, there would definitely be benefits. If they did not succeed, they would not lose any manpower. So, basically, they had adopted a tacit agreement. But the sudden attack from Worry-Free City made all those who had ulterior motives dumbfounded. Revenge? They were tired of living and dared to take revenge on Worry-Free City? Explain? Who could they explain to? The only thing they could do was to bring back the corpses of those people and then not say a word. The only consolation was that when they were roping in these musicians, the people they sent were not masters. They were just some relatively ordinary people. The strongest was only in the second or third degree. The losses were not considered big, that was all. Worry-Free City had obviously been deliberately waiting for the right time to make their move. It happened to be the night before the Royal Academy of Arts. This shocked many people. The local tyrant of the capital, the royal family, did not say a word. Obviously, it was a tacit agreement. Chongsheng Duke's residents also did not say a word. Similarly, it was a tacit agreement. If Worry-Free City's killers made their move, then these people would have died in vain. They would not even have anyone to take revenge on. After a night, there were a few fewer people preparing for the next day's examination. In short, those who had intended to study stayed behind. Those who had ulterior motives quickly restrained themselves. Looking at Worry-Free City's stance, it seemed that they intended to take the initiative to be the judge of this election. Who would be so blind as to go against Worry-Free City at this juncture? Even if they wanted to, how many lives would they have to go against it? Those candidates who were eager to enter the Royal Academy of Arts trembled as they waited for the examination one by one. Then, they were pleasantly surprised to find that the examiners did not make things difficult for them, as they had expected. They were only very serious in assessing their performance level. They were very fair and not biased. This made everyone overjoyed. They had thought that they would need some other means to enter the Royal Academy of Arts. Only now did they realize that there was no need for that. They only needed to honestly improve their performance level. If they had known this would happen, why would they play those schemes behind the scenes? Those who had participated in the examination did not have to wait for a long time for the results. They only needed a few minutes after the performance, and the examiners who were present would discuss it together. Very quickly, they would tell the examinees whether they could pass or not according to their standards. They would not have to be on tenterhooks for a few days. What was even more delightful was that among the first batch of examinees, there were also some who came to participate on their own, and their standards were pretty good. In any case, among those who participated in the exam on the first day, excluding those who withdrew, the acceptance rate of the remaining people was quite high, almost reaching 90%. In other words, as long as one had a certain level of performance and could perform a few suitable songs independently, they would basically be accepted. Those who were really rejected were those who knew that the musician guild had a high status, so they decided to join the profession at the last minute. They wanted to enter the Royal Academy of Arts after just learning a little. Not to mention the examiners. Even the other candidates who heard their performance outside kept shaking their heads. Therefore, no one felt that it was unfair for these people to be eliminated. Those people who were killed by the assassins of Worry-Free City were truly wronged. If he had known that this would happen, why would he have done such a strenuous and unrewarding thing? The Royal Academy of Arts had enough space and enough teachers for each of the musicians of the Royal Symphony Orchestra to teach a few or even dozens of students at the same time. Just the basic class alone had recruited close to 2,000 students within 10 days. On the other hand, the assessment for the advanced class was like hell. Because the examiners were masters and dozens of great grandmasters, the requirements were frighteningly strict. Generally, those who did not have enough standards would feel weak in the legs when faced with these old and virtuous great grandmasters, let alone perform well. If one wanted to enter the advanced class without the standard of the Royal Symphony Orchestra's first, second, and third seats of various musical instruments, they could just turn around and leave. Even if they had reached the standard and the great grandmasters had nodded their heads, there was still a huge barrier waiting for them. That's right, this huge barrier was the tuition fees. Now, everyone who had dealt with Wang Sheng knew one thing, and that was that when doing business with Wang Sheng, there was only one word to describe it: expensive. Wang Sheng was a person who was obsessed with money. The goods he gave were absolutely authentic, but the money he charged was definitely not cheap. The advanced class of the Royal Symphony Orchestra was taught one-on-one by all the great grandmasters. The duration of the study was half a year, and the tuition fee was 1 million gold coins per person. The basic class was also half a year, and the tuition fee was 10,000 gold coins per person. This was the price set by Wang Sheng. If one could not afford it, then sorry, one would not be qualified to participate in this term's advanced class. Wait for another time. Maybe in the future, when there were more great grandmasters, the tuition fees would drop and become cheaper. But was this possible? With Wang Sheng's consistent way of doing business, had anyone seen Wang Sheng's business reduce the price later on? Therefore, the latter statement was actually a comfort. Was it expensive? Yes, really expensive. But was it worth it? Think about a performance by a great grandmaster orchestra. Each audience member would receive 100,000 gold coins, a profit of 100 million. Excluding the maintenance costs of the Grand Theater and Wang Sheng's share, each great grandmaster would receive at least a few 100,000. A mere million gold coins was just a matter of 2 performances by a great grandmaster. If they graduated from the advanced class, they could not guarantee that all the students would reach the level of a great grandmaster, but at least they could guarantee that they would be at the same level as the current chief of the Royal Symphony Orchestra. One had to know that even the current symphony orchestra could lead the audience into the atmosphere of cultivation. And this was under the condition that the level of the symphony orchestra was not uniform. All of them had reached the level of a chief. They might not be comparable to a great grandmaster, but the effect would definitely be many times better than the current symphony orchestra. Was such an effect worth the investment of all the forces? The answer was, of course, yes. Therefore, almost every musician who could study in the advanced class had the support of a force behind them. A mere million gold coins tuition fees was not a problem at all. The first term of the basic class accepted about 2,000 students, and the musicians of the symphony orchestra taught them. The first term of the advanced class had more than 90 students and more than 20 great grandmasters. On average, each person had less than 4 students, so they could completely teach a small group of students. Half a year's time was enough for these people to improve. Only 100 million gold coins in half a year, and he still has to share it with those musicians and great grandmasters. Someone did a simple calculation, and then was greatly surprised. Has Duke Chongqing changed? He opened the Royal Academy of Arts with great fanfare, and he only earned this little gold coins? It can't be, right? Everyone could not believe their eyes, but 1 million gold coins tuition fees were obviously not cheap. Could it be that this time, Wang Sheng's business was so bad? You are too naive. Mayer heard this and directly snorted. Chapter 9:11. As she said this, Mayer was at the entrance of the courtyard that she had inspected with Wang Sheng, not far from the Royal Academy of Arts. She watched as everyone hung a signboard on the main entrance. There were only 2 words on the signboard: Yiyun. The font was square and proper. There was also a small signature stamp on it. If one didn't look carefully, they would definitely miss it. On the signature, It clearly wrote the four small words Duke Changsheng. Yiyun was the name of the newly opened shop. It mainly sold musical instruments. Of course, even the worst musical instruments were several times better than the ordinary ones on the market. However, these so-called premium instruments could only be placed at the outermost part of the shop. It was exactly the same as Qian Shengyuan. Once inside, it was the place where the real premium instruments were displayed. It could be said that there were all kinds of musical instruments here. There was even a grand piano. However, to be able to be placed here, all of them were personally made by the grandmasters. They had been reassembled and tested by the grandmasters and dozens of musical instrument grandmasters who came later. Not to mention other things, just the materials used for these instruments and the arrays inlaid on them were all coordinated with various theater amplification arrays when they were designed. Using these instruments, the difficulty of using spiritual energy to form spiritual energy oscillations was at least 50% lower than using normal musical instruments. However, the effects were definitely more than 50% stronger. The effect of entering and exiting could at least double the effect of spiritual energy oscillations. In Wang Sheng's words, Yiyun was the Qian Shunyuan of the musical instrument world. Any one of the top-grade musical instruments inside would cost at least a few 100,000 gold coins. This was just a simple flute without any accessories. If it were a zither or a zither, it would cost at least 2 million gold coins. Not to mention a magical instrument like the grand piano, just the upright piano alone would cost 5 million gold coins. For a grand piano, if you didn't have 10 million gold coins, don't ask about it or touch it. Yiyun's instruments were directly targeted at musicians who could enter the advanced class. Although the number of students was small, Wang Sheng had already made arrangements. The first period was 6 months. However, after the first period, the Royal Academy of Arts would recruit a batch of advanced students every 3 months. At the same time, the number of students would double. At that time, the first batch of students in the beginner class would have completed their training, and then some of them would have the ability to register for the advanced class. It could be said that as long as the various forces needed to use spirit chi oscillation to help their people improve their cultivation, the Royal Academy of Music would have a steady stream of business. In addition, Wang Sheng also had a long-term plan, which was a very formal academy training. This measure would be introduced in a year's time. The academy would require students to have a certain foundation, at least at the level of a beginner's class. Then, they would have to study at the Royal Academy of Arts for 3 years before they could be allowed to graduate. At that time, this batch of students would be even more skilled, and they would receive even more praise from all sides. These would be an inexhaustible source of customers for Yiyun in the future. At the same time, it would also guarantee that Yiyun would be able to earn a lot of gold coins in the future. Also, this world was actually very realistic. Not only people who played musical instruments will buy musical instruments. As long as the value was high enough, there would be people who would buy them for collection and appreciation. Especially in this world where a gentleman had to be proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, how could there be a lack of other clients? Not to mention others, there were so many brothel headliners. In the future, if you didn't have any Yun's Pipa or Guzheng, how could you dare call yourself a headliner? The 100 million gold coins and tuition fees previously was only the Royal Academy of Arts' initial expenses and startup funds. The real money-making projects had not started yet. Even so, these gold coins were enough for the Royal Academy of Arts' normal expenses for 10 years or more. In other words, in the future, Wang Sheng wouldn't need to invest a single gold coin in the Royal Academy of Arts. In the future, the higher tuition fees would be collected every year. After deducting the split with the great grandmasters and the land rent to the royal family, the rest would be Wang Sheng's net profit. At this time, there were people who came out to make fun of Wang Sheng for not making a lot of money from doing business. It was simply too hilarious. Mayer said that they were too naive. In fact, it was already a tactful way of saying that she was saving face for them. When the Royal Academy of Arts enrollment ended and classes officially started, Yiyun also officially opened. For the first lesson of the beginner class, the ordinary teachers of the Academy of Arts, who were also the members of the Royal Symphony Orchestra, brought their students in batches to the Yun shop outside to teach them how to recognize real high-quality musical instruments. As a musician, especially as a student of the Royal Academy of Arts, how could they not even know how to recognize a musical instrument? Even if they weren't good at a particular musical instrument, when they got their hands on it, they should at least know what was good and what was bad, right? As for the students of the advanced class, it was the same. However, since they had sufficient foundations, they entered the inner courtyard of Yun and were directly faced with those superb musical instruments of the highest grade and unique grade. The first lesson made all the students who joined the Royal Academy of Arts have a feeling of worship towards Yun's musical instruments. The deepest impression left behind was that in their lifetime, they must have a custom-made Yun musical instrument. What was strange was that the Royal Academy of Arts also recruited students in the fields of architecture and spell formation, but no one had signed up for these two professions. Regardless of whether it was Wang Sheng or the other great grandmasters in charge of this, none of them were surprised. In fact, all the major powers had very strong spell formation masters. It was just a mere sound amplification spell. Was there a need to specially pay money to the Royal Academy of Arts to learn? Wasn't this just giving gold coins to Wang Sheng for free? It was the same for architects. Everywhere was building on a large scale, and every power did not lack truly amazing architects. It was just the construction of a big theater. How could it be difficult for all the masters? With just a glance, those people basically had a plan in mind and knew how to build it. When they went inside to take a look, they understood even more. Was there need to go to school? Wang Sheng was very clear that everyone imagined the most troublesome big theater to be the simplest. This was not their fault. They had not seen the great master's heaven-defying ability to deal with the distribution of sound. It was easy to build a big theater, but to build a big theater that could vibrate with spiritual energy, that was another matter. Therefore, Wang Sheng was not at all worried that these two professions would not be popular. Instead, he took the opportunity to directly cancel these two professions. However, in the inner courtyard of Yun, there was an additional unique room. Currently, there were only 3 kinds of goods in it. The first was a diagram of a sound amplification spell. It was also the cheapest one. One diagram only cost 100,000 gold coins. Chapter 9:12. This array diagram was actually an ordinary sound amplification array diagram. It was basically no different from the array diagram outside. If there was really a difference, it would be the precision of the range of coverage. That was all. However, this sound amplification array was 10 times more expensive than the ordinary sound amplification array outside. It was obvious that no one was interested in it for the time being. However, compared to the other 2 items, the sound amplification array was extremely cheap. It was an extremely conscientious item. The second item was a set of designs for a small theater. The design of this small theater was exactly the same as the one in the Duke Wang Sheng's residence. Not only did it have the specific construction plan, but it also had the distribution plan of the array. It was extremely accurate. The price of this small theater design was very transparent. It was 10 million gold coins. Wang Sheng's rule of doing business was to exchange the goods with money. He was fair to both the old and the young. The third item was also a set of designs. The complete design of the Royal Theater also had the specific construction plan and the distribution plan of the array. The price of the Royal Theater's design was also very transparent. It was clearly marked at 100 million gold coins. The room where the 3 designs were placed was always open, but it was protected by an array. Everyone who entered the inner courtyard could see it, but they couldn't obtain it. After the Yun's reputation spread, it had an endless stream of customers every day. It was just like when Qian Xingyuan had opened his shop. However, almost all the customers had their eyes on the various musical instruments. No one was interested in the 3 designs. Wang Sheng thought that the Yun's biggest customers were the students from the Royal Academy of Arts. In the end, Wang Sheng was really wrong this time. The student from the Royal Academy of Arts Advanced and Basic classes had only come once. They were so engrossed in learning that they couldn't care less about the Yun. On the contrary, The literati that Wang Sheng thought would only be attracted to the Yiyun later came in an endless stream. Then, after carefully appreciating each musical instrument, they started to generously fork out their money. In less than half a month after opening, the Yiyun sales had exceeded 30 million gold coins. It could be said that Qian Shenyuan was fully deserving of his title in the music industry. Of course, the reason why the sales were so low was mostly because those people were only good at or appreciated some classical instruments. First, they didn't know how to play a real big instrument like a piano, and secondly, they couldn't carry it around with them. Instead, it was not as acceptable as a delicate bamboo flute or a long flute. At the very least, it was a guqin, which added a lot of elegance. From the opening of the Royal Academy of Arts, to the opening of the elegant Melody Music Store, to the launch of exquisite musical instruments, the series of actions of the Duke's Mansion was too much for the eyes to take in. Coupled with the fact that Carefree City had killed over 100 people, almost everyone's attention was focused on this matter. Naturally, the attention on the Duke's Mansion was lessened. In the Duke's Mansion, Wang Sheng's cultivation during this period of time could be described as smooth sailing. Every day was very regular. Rosa would transfer the inchi of 20 of her sisters to Wang Sheng. After a simple cultivation of the inchi of the scripture of Tao Scripture, Wang Sheng would start his normal training with equipment and swimming. In the afternoon, he would listen to the solo performances of the 3 great grandmasters, which lasted for 3 hours. During these 3 hours, Wang Sheng would crazily cultivate the 5-word formula with the help of the spiritual qi generated by the rhythm of the music. At night, Wang Sheng would once again cultivate the scripture of Tao Scripture before resting with Meyer and Rosa. With a regular life and regular cultivation, a month's time passed quietly. In this 1 month, the over 600 sisters in the Duke's Mansion finally made love with Sister Rosa. Each of them performed the heaven and earth reversal technique on Sister Rosa and started to cultivate the Yongshan Heart Sutra again. With Wang Sheng's generous financial support, no one realized that the over 600 beauties in the Duke's Mansion were slowly transforming into over 600 powerful experts. And Wang Sheng himself, under this 1 month's regular cultivation life, had a crazy increase in his cultivation. No one knew that Wang Sheng, who looked like nothing had changed, was like a fierce beast that was slowly awakening in his body. His cultivation had dropped to the unconventional realm, and when he started cultivating again, his foundation was many times more solid than the previous cultivation. This time, he did not rely on the upgrade of his spirit. Wang Sheng used the powerful scripture of Tao 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 Scripture of 9 words to increase his power. The situation where he did not pay attention to the cultivation of spiritual qi during the first cultivation did not happen again. Every time he leveled up, it was a smooth process. This also caused Wang Sheng to reach the strength of the 7th stage of Qianyo transformation when he was in the 6th stage. Now, with the crazy recovery of the realm, his strength had increased greatly. A month's time was enough for Wang Sheng to reach the edge of a breakthrough under the stimulation of the 5 words formula. The 5 words formula was really powerful. When he was in the 3-word formula, it could only support Wang Sheng's rapid recovery at the 2nd stage. When the 4-word formula supported him to the 5th stage, the effect of the 5 words formula on Wang Sheng's recovery was at least 10 times the normal speed. This was only the effect of the recovery of cultivation. If the 5 words formula became the attack formula, the attack power of the same spiritual qi attack could be at least 3 times. After being purified by Sister Rosa, the yin qi of over 600 women was completely injected into Wang Sheng's body. Old Taoist Ling Su's yang qi was no longer the only dominant force in his acupuncture points. Although the yin qi was still unable to compete with the yang qi, it could still occupy a small part of the acupuncture points. Under Wang Sheng's daily cultivation, he was gradually reducing the awareness of both sides, achieving a balance between yin and yang. He had been lying low for a long time. He had not left Carefree City for a few months already. The threat of Uncle Lee had been temporarily resolved. Sister Rose's troubles had also been completely resolved. Even the over 600 beauties had been taken care of. It could be said that it was quite perfect. The words, "You're here," from the girl in his dreams would often appear in Wang Sheng's mind when he crossed the line in the core of the ground of Thousand Despair. Recently, it had become more and more frequent. Wang Sheng knew that he was getting impatient. He was eager to explore the secrets of the core of the ground of Thousand Despair. "Master, work hard with your old buddies again." Wang Sheng took the initiative to look for Master Yu and arranged a performance for all the martial grandmasters. "I have a feeling that after this performance, I will be able to completely recover." In addition, we can also see how many important figures from various forces will be attracted here. Master Yu agreed to Wang Sheng's request without hesitation. He then took the initiative to greet the busy martial grandmasters at the Royal Academy of Arts. The Duke's Mansion released another piece of news. There would be a performance in the Royal Grand Theater 3 days later. The ticket price was 100,000 gold coins, and there were only 200 tickets left. Once the news came out, the whole capital city was in an uproar. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.